If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 101, Successive Breakthrough. Word count 1745. When Zhao Wei left the scripture repository, darkness had already begun to spread throughout the dark blue skies. Zhao Wei inhaled the cold, frigid air of the night as the chilling wind tried to bite through his thick skin. The signs of winter are quite imminent, he thought. Days felt shorter and shorter while nights felt somehow long, but to an enlightened cultivator, time mattered not. As Zhao Wei reached his residence, pure white snowflakes began to suddenly and gradually fall from the sky. Zhao Wei raised his index finger toward the sky and a lone icy snowflake perfectly landed on his finger. He observed it for a few seconds before the inner strength beneath his skin melted it into a liquid droplet, followed by the process of evaporation. The dawn of the Nightwalkers is nigh. What will you do, youngling Snow? Zhao Wei chuckled in a reminiscent voice before entering his house. It was time to sort out everything he had absorbed from the outer sex scripture repository. Zhao Wei found it exhilarating that his mind had yet to break from the sheer turbulence of knowledge he had acquired. His mind seemed to have limitless storage, but it came at a price. It was just a small price, and what he had to pay was fatigue and bouts of lethargy. Not bad, right? Zhao Wei attributed such a boon to his ungodly god-eye variant, which also gave him the additional perk of perfect recall. In sci-fi terms, Zhao Wei was basically high on a permanent buff from a perfected NZT-48. The house allocated to him was quite spacious, very clean, and well furnished, Zhao Wei noted once again as he made himself comfortable on a thick but soft futon. I have been keeping it simple at the peak of the 7th realm of Consolidated Realm for quite some time now. Zhao Wei smiled to himself. His current cultivation speed was faster compared to when he had been a mortal talent. As for how much better it was, Zhao Wei didn't know. His intuition told him that his new talent was infinitely more heaven-defying than even heaven-tier bodies, ancient bloodline holders, and god-eye descendants. There was simply no estimate or measure to it. Sensing that he had forgotten something important to create an atmosphere favorable for his meditation, Zhao Wei stood up and searched for calming incense sticks. A few minutes later, Zhao Wei could be seen meticulously lighting up the incense sticks inside his cultivation room. Just smelling the scent emanating from the burning incense made Zhao Wei's thoughts less chaotic and his inner mind felt relaxed. He remembered reading somewhere in the library that these incense sticks were created from a special psychic attributed plant. Its effects were truly wonderful. Feeling that he had already wasted enough time, Zhao Wei immediately sat cross-legged on the futon and closed his eyes. Zhao Wei then began to scroll through the contents of his mind and realized that he truly had a lot to do. The tens of thousands of techniques he had recorded were in an utter state of disharmony, but Zhao Wei didn't feel hopeless. He calmly took his sweet time to categorize the knowledge he had into their respective paths. There were archery skills, spear techniques, sword arts, healing arts, movement arts, saber skills, inner strength techniques, and even the rare body refining arts. He didn't leave out the miscellaneous knowledge he had acquired and made a slot for it inside his mind. Even without the use of mind-related divine techniques, Zhao Wei found it easy to construct an imaginary palace/library to systematically organize his repertoire of knowledge. If he was ever asked if he really was knowledgeable, then he would beg to disagree. He didn't know. He didn't see. Zhao Wei treated himself like a newborn baby. He was still learning. He had yet to truly learn to the fullest. He was but a mere man in the pursuit of impossibilities and dreams meant only to be fantasized about. He was pitifully small compared to the depths of the universe's knowledge and the infinite void beyond the cosmos. That was the true essence of a scholar, of a dreamer, of a relentless spirit. And he, Zhao Wei, embodied those three aspects. My approach here was wrong all along. Flaws and mistakes, haha. Very good. Zhao Wei smiled internally as he revised one of his techniques. Primeval Azure Wood Art was a wood elemental technique he got from Guan Palace's martial hall. It was at best a half-holy martial art, and through drawing a lot of references from the wood-based arts inside his mind, Zhao Wei inferred another possibility for the primeval Azure Wood Art. Even though he had perfected the technique, it still had its own limitations. Zhao Wei's affinity with plants had increased, and his sense of perception toward the essence of wood elements in the atmosphere was unimaginably high. The limits existed in the types of situations Zhao Wei would find himself in. If I ever get myself trapped inside a secluded domain of extreme fire affinity, then the technique would virtually be useless. What if the wood elements in the atmosphere are very scarce or in disorder? Zhao Wei analyzed different possibilities and outcomes while envisioning himself in separate scenarios. With the current knowledge he had absorbed, Zhao Wei used a few hours to tweak primeval azure wood art into a new, much more improved version. The upgraded primeval azure wood art currently wasn't only limited to plants and wood elements in the atmosphere to heal himself. It was now tied down also to his inner strength reserves, which he prided himself in. By just consuming his inner strength, he could ultimately mend bone fractures, regenerate his flesh, and even heal his internal organs if they aren't critically injured. Zhao Wei considered his recently gained myriad constellation physique as incomplete, as it was only in its foundational phase. His self-created supreme body art, primordial stellar energy body refining arts, was also just a foundation he had set for future improvements. It was just like building a house. What mattered most wasn't how aesthetically pleasing and beautiful it was, but the very foundation that was used to erect it. The previous groundwork laid was the strongest determinant of a sturdy house. After hours of concentration and analysis, Zhao Wei redesigned and filled the holes and flaws in the primordial stellar energy body refining arts. His past self was also prone to a couple of mistakes and was limited by the knowledge he had at that point in time. Kaka. Surprisingly, when Zhao Wei finished revising his techniques, he casually had a natural breakthrough into the 8th level of Consolidated Realm, and it didn't stop there, as his celestial pure inner strength broke the gates of yet another hurdle. A few moments later, Zhao Wei wore a smile on his handsome face as solidified his new cultivation advancement at the peak of the 8th level of Consolidated Realm. How effortless can it get? An insufferable grin adorned his lips as he helplessly shrugged to the heavens and fate. As if he was mocking them and making a point. What a bastard! There was something called karma in existence, and its threads always scavenged for individuals such as Zhao Wei. Humility must be practiced in times of success. It's too early to be celebrating the fruits of my meager ingenuity. Yes, be like an immovable mountain. Zhao Wei rubbed his nose comically as he tried to reason with himself. Man, I feel like running amok. Zhao Wei stretched his hands as he loudly yawned due to, well, hunger. When he went outside, he was surprised that the morning sun was already up to jumpstart the day. Hours of meditation can really feel like an eternity. Zhao Wei mumbled as two female servants emerged from another section of his big house and approached him with respectful, demure gazes. Good morning, young master. The two young women greeted him at the same time in their cute voices. Good morning. Zhao Wei calmly replied with a casual smile. The two female servants blushed heavily when they witnessed his breathtakingly beautiful smile that made their hearts skip a beat. How could they remain immune to the young man's physical magnetism? The two female servants felt lucky to be in the presence of such a beautiful young master whose charm bordered perfection. Obviously, Zhao Wei wasn't blind to the reactions of those female servants. Zhao Wei ignored the effect he had on the opposite sex and treated it as normal. Nothing to make a fuss about. Young master, we have already prepared your breakfast in a hot bath. Which one would you like first? They both asked in perfect synchronization. Zhao Wei pretended to think about his options as he held his chin with his fine thumb. What if I eat both of you for breakfast? Zhao Wei said with a serious expression on his face. The two cute female servants felt terrified by Zhao Wei's suggestion as they hugged each other in terror. Please, young master, we don't taste good. Our tender meat won't satisfy you. They whined like pitiful puppies and looked at him with their huge beady eyes. So pure, so flirtatious. So innocent. Ha ha ha. A burst of exhilarating laughter escaped Zhao Wei's perfectly shaped lips as he enjoyed the reactions of those two girls. While his laughter might have sounded like a celestial melody from the court of the heavenly emperor during other times, this time the two cuties felt Zhao Wei's laughter was akin to that of a devil emperor. Go and serve me a lot of food, young ladies. I was just joking with you. Zhao Wei explained himself with a reassuring smile which immediately calmed the maiden hearts of the female servants. As they hurriedly escaped into the house with their dainty hands on their developing chests, they couldn't help but heavily blush at what they had just experienced. The young master was surely a playful bada who could give young women heart attacks. As I watch the sunrise on a grateful universe, what more could I wish for? Zhao Wei's gaze lingered on the retreating figures of those young ones before looking at the golden horizon. Later on, Zhao Wei entered the house to eat his morning meal. Chapter 102, What is a Sword? After taking his sweet time to savor the breakfast buffet, Zhao Wei finally satiated his accumulated hunger. Since the house servants had already prepared the bath for him, Zhao Wei took the chance to soak his slightly tired body in flower-scented warm water. Phew, nothing beats a warm bath after long hours of meditation. Zhao Wei sighed in relaxation and contentment, his eyes slightly fluttering close. Wait, am I being too girly for taking a bath in the cultivation world, Keek? Zhao Wei abruptly opened his eyes and started to laugh. Actually, with the way his physical body had been transformed into something never seen before in the fan universe, there was certainly no need for him to care about smelling bad. Zhao Wei's natural fragrance seemed to be eternally soothing and calming like the morning sun or the stellar twinkle of the constellations. He was eternally fragrant. Someone like Cha Han would definitely strap on him like a koala if left uncontrolled. That aside, taking wonderful baths once in a while wasn't bad for his own peace of mind and earthly soul. I still have a lot to do, and since I am just one person I can't do everything at once. That's the limitation of having only 2 hands. There's no need for impatience. Zhao Wei stood up from the small pool, his breathtaking obscene tidbits exposed out in the open. As rivulets of water trickled down his naked form, it created a form of otherworldly artistic inspiration for any master painter. Every sculpt of his abs and muscles glistened under the golden rays of the sun as he lazily wore the bathrobe. A few moments later, Zhao Wei stood outside, clad in the signature black robes of inner disciples. Meanwhile, far away, down the hill Zhao Wei was occupying, Chen hurriedly walked with a bitter expression on his face. He lamented the fact that he was now an errand boy instead of being Elder Hai Yun's disciple. Even if there were differences between levels of importance placed on disciples, why did he have to be treated like a lesser being? He didn't like it, and he was kinda jealous of those who had talent higher than his. But the problem was that Chen couldn't do anything about it since it was Hai Yun's orders. Chen couldn't disobey him or show dissatisfaction. The benefits he got for being a revered elder's disciple outweighed his inner misgivings. From a kilometer away, Zhao Wei also happened to spot Chen, an insignificant stepping stone for the original protagonist, Zhao Feng. He observed his facial expressions with perfect clarity and couldn't help but scoff a little bit. Chen's emotions were like an open book that he could easily read. In essence, he was a predictable fellow. It seems Hai Yun has finally decided to teach us or do whatever masters do for their disciples. Zhao Wei rubbed his chin with a smirk on his face. Hai Yun, will you still be a dog for the Iron Dragon Alliance, or will fate finally be lenient to you? He exhaled softly as he slowly recalled Hai Yun's backstory and unavoidable execution from his most trusted disciple. Personally, Zhao Wei didn't want to be tied down by such pesky political plays between mortal countries. They didn't hold any value to his ambitions. At present, he was barely a disposable pawn on the chessboard between true Lord Realm experts. I have to work harder and smarter to be the ultimate chessboard controller. Zhao Wei reassured himself before looking at the huge silver gate leading to his residence. With his X-ray vision, he saw Chen standing there with an impatient expression. Unlike elders, inner disciples didn't have guards to monitor visitors, so Zhao Wei decided to skip the part where Chen would have to bang on the gate. Brother Chen, I am deeply honored by your presence, Zhao Wei said loudly, and his suddenness directly startled Chen, who couldn't believe that he had already been found out. Come in. What? How did Zhao Wei know I was the one behind the door? Does he have some sort of ability capable of seeing through objects, or was my presence just too obvious? Chen had multiple thoughts run through his shocked mind. Feeling that he wouldn't arrive at a concrete answer anytime soon, Chen threw the thoughts to the back of his mind. I won't stand on ceremony then. He decided to enter Zhao Wei's new residence. There was no time to waste as he had to relay Master Hai Yun's message to Zhao Wei. You look healthy and full of positive energy, Brother Chen. Zhao Wei greeted Chen as an unnoticeable twinkle flashed in his eyes. Tisk, do I look like someone full of positivity? Can't you see I am currently relegated to a mere errand boy? I really want to punch that smart-ass mouth of yours, but it's a pity that Master doesn't like nonsense and I would be the one to suffer his infinite wrath. Chen swallowed back his anger and annoyance with a friendly smile. Zhao Wei saw through Chen's bitterness and he couldn't help but smile internally. Zhao Wei found it fun to play around with him as a means to ease his boredom. Brother Zhao, you are surely jesting. Chen shook his head before a serious expression settled on his face. Brother Zhao, I think it would be wise if we don't keep Master waiting when he has summoned you. Zhao Wei nodded lightly as he followed Chen. It would be better if Hai Yun had a message token or a communication device to summon me instead of using Chen. As a junior brother, it's truly disheartening to see him suffering inside his heart. Zhao Wei couldn't get any more hypocritical as he beamed an angelic smile to a random beautiful inner disciple on the way. The random female disciple got discombobulated. It didn't take long before the two reached the quarters of Elder Hai Yun. After greeting Elder Hai Yun with a respectful bow, Zhao Wei realized that Beimoy had arrived earlier than him. Of course, Zhao Wei's courtyard was situated further away from Elder Hai Yun's residence compared to Beimoi. Zhao Wei had wanted it to be like that. Now he just wondered what Hai Yun was going to teach or impart to them. When it came to beneficial knowledge, Zhao Wei didn't have any biases even if it originated from the enemy or someone he didn't like. A true human rank master like Hai Yun would definitely have eye-opening insights toward life and cultivation in general. Zhao Wei couldn't help but be interested in what Hai Yun would say or demonstrate. The same could be said for both Beimoi and Chuan Chen. With his arms behind his back, Hai Yun calmed at the plum blossom trees inside his courtyard. He then observed the gentle swaying of its branches before looking at his 3 disciples. Today, Hai Yun wore extremely white robes with wide sleeves that made him look like a saint. What is a sword? His cold yet gentle words echoed in the minds of the 3 confused young men. What is a sword? Who would have expected Hai Yun to ask such a silly question? Chapter 103, Contrarian Approach. What is a sword? Zhao Wei's confusion stemmed from the fact that Hai Yun was asking something quite unexpected. In the novel, it wasn't clearly stipulated what type of arts or dao the traitorous Hai Yun pursued. Maybe it was because Hai Yun was just a minor antagonist meant to be there as a mere chopping board for the protagonist. Zhao Wei was once again reminded that he was just a reader, and even the creator of the novel, King of Gods, was just an author with no power over his fictional reality once he put an epilogue on it. But then came the question that Hai Yun had asked, what is a sword? To Zhao Wei, the question was very simple with no sense of profundity whatsoever. There was no deep meaning behind it, and honestly, Zhao Wei didn't care if Hai Yun was testing them. He didn't rush to tackle the question as he waited to hear how the other 2 would answer. Zhao Wei didn't have to wait long as Chuan Chen raised his hand. Master, can I answer? Chuan Chen smiled confidently. You may try, Hai Yun hummed a reply as he curiously looked at Chuan Chen. He wondered what type of answer he would get from Chuan Chen. The sword is the swordsman's closest kin, and it represents his conviction and feelings. It is his pride and ideals capable of cutting through injustices, evil, and those who stand in his way. Chuan Chen fluently explained with pride in his voice. Oh ho, I honestly didn't expect something like that from you, Chuan Chen. You are truly an enlightened being. Zhao Wei secretly praised Chuan Chen in his heart, albeit with hidden sarcasm. Zhao Wei was honestly disappointed by Chuan Chen's overly complicated explanation. Hai Yun didn't show any ripples in his facial expression after hearing Chuan Chen's insights. It was hard to know what was going on inside his mind. Chuan Chen was expecting praise from his master, but he only got a blank, unreadable expression from him. He clenched his teeth in frustration. What about you, Beimoi? Hai Yun diverted the question to the genius, Beimoi. How will Beimoi answer the question? Hai Yun wondered. I don't understand the Dao of sword, nor have I ever been interested in it. So I don't think I am confident enough to give the right answer. Beimoi didn't give a straightforward answer as he didn't want to be proven wrong. It was true that he didn't dabble in anything related to the Dao of sword, and as a genius, it was a lie to say that he didn't know a thing or two about the sword. Beimoi hated nothing more than losing his face after what that detestable Zhao Wei did. Although he considered himself a true genius, Beimoi had to acknowledge that he was sitting close to an intellectual monster with all sorts of brainy answers. Beimoi understood that Zhao Wei had more comprehension talent than him. That was the true essence of his rival. Hai Yun's expression showed some changes after hearing Beimoi's reply. Well, he didn't see that coming. If Beimoi was reluctant to share his insights about the sword, then as the master, he shouldn't bother to pressurize him. This was an atmosphere of learning anyway. Zhao Wei felt like laughing after observing Beimoi's expressionless face. He really doesn't like embarrassing himself, that boy. Why strive for a perfect answer when the question itself is very simple? Zhao Wei understood Beimoi and even admired him for taking a beating. What about you? Hai Yun had lost hope of getting any exciting answer from his 3 disciples as he gave the last chance to Zhao Wei. Zhao Wei slightly cleared his throat as if he were preparing his vocal cords for a bombastic, heaven-shattering answer. What is a sword? Zhao Wei started by asking himself loudly. Chuan Chen looked at Zhao Wei with an anticipatory gaze. He was waiting for the latter to embarrass himself or give an unsatisfactory reply. Why are you pretending when you are simply a kid wet behind his ears? You know nothing about the sword compared to me. Beimoi was just curious about what type of sh*t Zhao Wei was going to cook this time. A sword is just a tool, simply disposable trash. What? After taking your sweet time to think about the question, now what type of answer are you giving to us? Beimoi almost choked on his own saliva. After all, he was the only one who truly understood how Zhao Wei liked to talk like an old sage with near limitless knowledge. How could he foresee Zhao Wei spouting **t with such a straight face? Although he was confounded as everyone else, Chuan felt happy that Zhao Wei made a fool out of himself. It would be a lie to say that Hai Yun wasn't angered by the cheap reply from Zhao Wei. It's just that he didn't show it on his face and kept his cool. As a dignified true spirit realm expert, it wouldn't portray well if he got triggered easily by the words of a mere mortal. Can you explain the reason behind your answer? Hai Yun had an amiable expression on his face as he urged Zhao Wei to expound more on his unforeseen reply. Zhao Wei arched his brow comically as if his answer didn't need more exposition, but to not sully the dignity of his master, he cleared his throat. A scholarly aura merged with indomitable confidence surrounded him as he began. Elder Hai Yun, Beimoi, and Chuan had the illusion that Zhao Wei was really going to explain something profound as seen by how serious he was. As I said before, a sword is simply a disposable tool just as any weapon. It is simple and has no deep meaning. This time round, Zhao Wei gave his true perspective. He had read quite a lot of books related to weapon Dao in general, and the Dao of sword was very common, with many users in the Azure Flower continent. It was your typical, mainstream weapon and Dao of choice in almost every cultivation universe. Earlier, I didn't mean to sound vulgar or disrespectful, master. I dare not claim that I know everything that there is to know about the sword, but what I know is that simply, the weapon matters not. The sword shouldn't be overly complicated or overly glorified. The same can be applied to other weapons. Zhao Wei had more to say, but he put an ending to what he had in mind. Hai Yun looked at Zhao Wei with a stupefied expression for a few seconds before a rare smile formed on his handsome face. What a simple explanation. I thought he was going to cause trouble again. Hai Yun shook his head lightly. But it seems the answers that I have been looking for are very well contained in his inspirational insights. Who would have expected this disciple of mine to indirectly help me in unraveling the mysteries of the Dao of Sword? Chuan had his mouth hanging wide open, nearly kissing the floor. A nearby fly narrowly escaped death as Chuan quickly composed himself by closing his mouth shut lest he look like a fool. I have never seen the master smile. Where in the world are we heading? Chuan cursed inwardly. I didn't call you here to ask about the sword, by the way. Beimoi and Zhao Wei, I have something to give you too, Hai Yun said as he removed 2 jade cases from his sleeves. A weird expression flashed on Zhao Wei's face when he saw Hai Yun's actions. Just how the hell do these masters hide things in their sleeves? Beimoi received the palm-sized tightly closed jade case from Elder Hai Yun. Zhao Wei also received one. Even though the special jade case was tightly closed, it didn't prevent the thick medicinal scent contained within from diffusing out. Those are the Broken Moon Breath returning pills. They are helpful to the cultivation of anyone below the 4th sky of Ascended Realm. Also, Zhao Wei, congratulations on your breakthrough. I look forward to your future progression. Hai Yun brandished a meaningful smile as he looked at Zhao Wei. What? Zhao Wei had a breakthrough? When? Both Chuan and Beimoi stared at Zhao Wei, and true to Hai Yun's words, he had really broken through the peak of the 8th level of Consolidated Realm. I didn't intend to hide it from you guys. It is just that you are too blind. Why didn't you realize it earlier on? Zhao Wei shamelessly spoke without restraint. Emotional damage. It was true, Zhao Wei never took any measures to hide his newly gained cultivation realm. There was simply no need. Also, masters of the true spirit realm had spiritual sense, and that meant that you really couldn't hide anything from them, especially if you had a weaker cultivation base. Chapter 104, More Energy Requirements. I suddenly feel the pressure more clearly now that Zhao Wei has broken through. With him basically having the same cultivation base as mine, my chances of winning against him have now become non-existent. Beimoi mulled over the sudden news with a hardened expression. His competitive spirit was roused even more, and he felt a sense of urgency to also increase his own cultivation and practice his skills to the limits. Subconsciously, Beimoi felt that even doing all that wouldn't simply be enough to completely suppress Zhao Wei. His efforts had to be maximized, and infinitely more than Zhao Wei's. In his own understanding, even though they shared the same level of talent, Beimoi had a feeling that someone like Zhao Wei couldn't be evaluated merely by the measure of potential. Beimoi found such people to be extremely terrifying and unpredictable. Even though Beimoi knew about Zhao Wei's monstrosity more than anyone, it didn't mean that his will to fight had been extinguished. In fact, he was extra motivated. A man should never lose hope in the face of impossibilities or almost insurmountable odds. After Master Hai Yun gave them the Broken Moon Breath returning pills, he also shared some of his insights about cultivation and, more importantly, about the Ascended Realm. The realm that both Bei Moi and Zhao Wei were going to ultimately have to break through was the Ascended Realm, and having prior knowledge about it, especially from a true spirit realm expert, was undoubtedly a very valuable experience. Even for someone who was already an Ascended Realm expert like Chen, he knew that cultivation insights from Master Hai Yun were priceless. In essence, from the true spirit realm onwards, martial Dao practitioners were closer to heaven and earth, and their understanding of the introductory levels of cultivation was solid. As someone who had expansive knowledge but no relative experience, Zhao Wei also benefited from the lecture. No one was truly omniscient after all. From an omniscient point of view, every regressor or transmigrator would surely think that they know everything about the past, present, and future, not knowing that the advantages they have are subject to erosion due to the butterfly effect or unforeseen threatening external factors. How can a frog in a well understand the events beyond the well? Even true omniscience felt almost like a paradox to Zhao Wei. The lecture only continued for about 3 hours, and after that, Master Hai Yun dismissed them. Bei Moi went to his cultivation abode with a new perspective, as if he was evolving intellectually. He could also feel that his next breakthrough was imminent, and with the help of the 2 Broken Moon Breath returning pills, reaching the Ascended Realm and condensing the true force within 2 months wasn't impossible. Chen also felt that with how his juniors were going, he was soon going to be left behind due to the differences in their talent level and focus. He directly went into closed-door meditation. As for Zhao Wei, he simply knew that he could do limitless things in a day, but time and physical limitations existed for a reason to the current him. Back at the secluded hill, Zhao Wei's inner court residence. An extremely handsome man with lustrous flowing black hair could be seen sitting like a lotus bodhisattva near a garden of flowers. Chrysanthemum flowers had just begun blooming beautifully in the garden, and Zhao Wei couldn't help but sit in admiration of them. What a wonderful smell! Zhao Wei inhaled the fresh air before closing his eyes to savor the invigorating scent of nature. The future progression of the primordial stellar energy body refining arts, I think, should be categorized under the chapter system as seen by its evolving aspect. Zhao Wei muttered to himself as a multicolored butterfly fearlessly fluttered its wings around him before landing on his outstretched index finger. Currently, I should be at the first chapter corresponding to the consolidated realm. The illusory stars inside my cells have experienced an exponential increase from 100 million to nearly 500 million. I wonder what type of changes I would incite after reaching or surpassing 1 billion illusory stars. A gust of cool wind blew past Zhao Wei's body, and the multicolored butterfly used the currents to fly freely, unrestrained, before landing on the purple-white petals of a chrysanthemum flower. Zhao Wei had already opened all the hidden 351 acupoints together with the basic 108 acupoints. They totaled 451 acupoints. This number was certainly significant, but Zhao Wei still felt that something was missing, as if the number of acupoints he had opened were only the tip of the iceberg. The intuition was strong, and Zhao Wei couldn't just ignore it. Even so, Zhao Wei couldn't actively seek after what he couldn't actively see or understand. He just lacked the perfect opportunity to unveil the mysteries behind the acupoints. Acupoints aside, Zhao Wei had also unclogged all of his vital meridians and special meridians to further facilitate the overall fluidity of his immense inner strength. My cultivation speed is good, but the ultimate cheats of cultivation progression are ultimately pills, haha. If I don't pursue the Dao of alchemy to the extreme, then I will surely feel regrets. What I lack, I shall take it from the heavens through the great Dao of alchemy. It would be a pity if I don't become the unrivaled medicine god, pill god of a generation, or even the alchemy emperor hehe. Zhao Wei chuckled lightly as he removed the medicinal jade case hidden within his clothes. Without hesitation, Zhao Wei gently opened the case before taking one pill between his slender fingers. He then closely scrutinized the fragrant pill under the light of the sun before mercilessly popping it into his mouth like candy. Due to the superiority of his physique, the pill didn't have to reach his dantian before it began being absorbed by his body. The medicinal power was circulated all around his body, through his blood vessels and meridians. It felt intoxicating and refreshing. His body technique, primordial stellar energy body refining arts, passively acted on its own, slowly increasing the illusory stars within his body cells. The moon in the broken moon breath returning pill attributed to the yin aspect of the pill, which was a perfect tonic for the technique. Kaka. His cultivation base broke through to the 9th realm of the consolidated realm before solidifying at the beginner level. It seems the amount of energy needed to have successive breakthroughs is going to be experiencing a massive increase from here on, Zhao Wei lightly mused as he scratched his chin. The remaining pill isn't going to help me reach the peak of my current realm, but it can do something about my body cultivation progression. Zhao Wei played with the remaining pill between his fingers. The amount of energy contained within the broken moon breath returning pills was extremely potent and turbulent, but it seemed rather tame in Zhao Wei's body. Yum! The last pill finally entered his mouth. The dao of popping pills is rather weak here. Zhao Wei smiled as his cells actively devoured the medicinal power of the pill into nothingness. If an alchemy master saw him playing around with pills like that, especially the broken moon breath returning pills, they would surely consider Zhao Wei an absolute freak. Chapter 105, Ascension and Flight Experimentation. It was noon and the silhouette of the sun could barely be made out in the sky as it remained hidden by gloomy clouds. Zhao Wei took in a deep breath before gently exhaling. Golden specks of sun energy continuously washed over his figure like a waterfall, and a barely visible halo of sunlight formed behind his back like an eternal sun wheel. The pores on his body absorbed the essence of the sun, before being guided into his internal system. Zhao Wei was constantly refining his blood vessels, vital organs, meridians, acupoints, bones, skin, and even his marrows. His face remained calm and collected despite the pain of body cultivation. He understood pain and had long embraced it. Zhao Wei's pain resistance was at the highest levels, and he was by no means masochistic. Anyway, this kind of extreme body cultivation was rare and thorough, as Zhao Wei was just repeating cycles of refinement. The numbers of the illusory stars were also steadily increasing so fast since it was noon. The pure celestial inner strength within his body churned violently as if it were being controlled by a mysterious law. Zhao Wei was finalizing the first chapter of the primordial stellar energy body refining arts, and as it neared its completion, the conversion of his inner strength into a much stronger form of energy began. Zhao Wei had been harboring thoughts of forming his true force, first through his body. Apart from the original protagonist Zhao Feng, Zhao Wei wondered if there had been individuals who tried to enter the ascended realm through their physical strength. The history of martial arts was extremely long, and Zhao Wei thought that the probability of some individuals trying to achieve what he was trying wasn't low. The river of time would never lack innovators and geniuses of different magnitudes. As such, Zhao Wei didn't put himself on a high pedestal. He just acknowledged the fact that the new generation would always surpass the old as the world of cultivation continued to evolve in terms of talent, techniques, and completely new paths. I have an ordinary human bloodline, so I have to grind my body cultivation to monstrous levels. Zhao Wei talked to himself as time continued to fly. 5 hours later, a transcendent force of holiness permeated every inch of Zhao Wei's flesh, and with every breath that he took, it was closely reminiscent of a terrifying sleeping primordial beast. His breath alone could truly decimate anyone in the consolidated realm into a skeletal mess without even trying. Rune-like characters, Sanskrit, began slithering around his body, and it made him look ancient and enigmatic. Various changes were happening all over his physique, transforming him into an ascended being. 850 million illusory stars. 900 million illusory stars. 950 illusory stars. 960. 970. 980. 990. 999 million illusory stars. 1 billion illusory stars. Boom. Zhao Wei felt as if a supernova explosion occurred inside his body. He could literally feel his cells swimming in joy within his blood as they combusted and reformed into new versions. With this cycle of destruction and reconstruction, his physical body was also affected. Zhao Wei couldn't have foreseen such abstract changes, but through his mental calculations and intuition, he knew that his life wasn't going to be in grave danger. What terrified him was when his body began to turn illusory, similar to the stars within his cells. Am I also an illusion? Am I not real? Several doubts and worries crowded his agitated mind. No, I shouldn't panic. I should totally be calm. Zhao Wei reminded himself as he used his consciousness to observe all the micro-changes happening both in his internal and external body. If you can't tell the difference between reality and illusion, you will be trapped in the illusion for all eternity. What is an illusion? What is reality? Zhao Wei immersed himself in that ethereal feeling. Illusion Dao was an elusive path, and Zhao Wei was just opening the gates leading to such a path. His body was experiencing a second transformation, as if it was remodeling itself into an independent law. Was there really an existing law in the history of the fan universe that was related to the ways of body tempering? With Zhao Wei's comprehension, he noted down this mystery. It was profound, and he couldn't fully grasp what was happening as it involved the connection between the human body and the universe. It was such an esoteric concept for the current him. 1 hour later, the second metamorphosis of his body stopped and Zhao Wei opened his eyes. They were still silver in color with tints of gold like the sun. The change wasn't easily noticeable and it didn't make him stand out like a freak. Zhao Wei could sense the terrifying true force flowing throughout his muscles like an endless torrent. He felt like he could effortlessly leap 100 meters off the ground if he wished. With the knowledge that he currently had and his understanding of acupoints and the ascended realm, Zhao Wei had been inspired to experiment on the impossible. Flight. Who said that only true spirit realm experts could fly for longer periods? Ascended realm experts could also fight in the air for brief periods, but Zhao Wei wanted to break those conventions. The acupoints located on my feet. Zhao Wei muttered lightly. What if I cut off the energy output on the Yang Chuan Acupointment on the sole of my feet and then release it all of a sudden in large quantities? Wouldn't achieving aerial maneuverability be plausible? I need to test it to be more sure. Zhao Wei looked at his feet with a crazy smile on his face. Time to go on a ride. Zhao Wei concentrated a huge amount of true force into the Yang Chuan Acupointment before exploding it all of a sudden. The resultant propulsion pushed Zhao Wei off the ground and he was mercilessly hurled into the air. Oh shit! Curses sprang out of his mouth as he found his butt high up in the sky. It was a terrifying experience as Zhao Wei felt his world go round and round. If he couldn't control his flight, he was surely going to break many bones and severely injure his internal organs. Zhao Wei could already visualize his future as the free fall began. I am dead. The pull of gravity clutched onto his helpless form with all its might. Zhao Wei was in a crisis and needed to think of ways to save himself from injuries. Time was ticking. These were the times that Zhao Wei wished that he was an undead like Andy to indulge in such recklessness. Chapter 106, Recklessness and Control, Primordial Stellar Intent. Is being reckless considered bad? The universal answer was no. However, the answer was entirely subjective when the same question was presented to multiple individuals. Without a doubt, reckless behavior may stem from situational occurrences that an individual may have control over or completely have nothing. Zhao Wei considered himself reckless by trying to perform such risky experimentation. He understood that he was taking a shortcut opened through inspiration and a gamble, an untrodden path that had yet to be ventured. The same old risks and benefits sharing the sides of the same coin. Zhao Wei mused as his mind raced with different thoughts. He tried to come up with the most efficient solution to counter the risk of plummeting to death. In the face of such a possible outcome of perishing eternally in the worst possible scenario, Zhao Wei remained in a tranquil state, the expressionless silver of his eyes giving off the idea that it was not yet the time. Having died once via the unknown entity's magnanimity, there was no way Zhao Wei was going to get himself killed by his own hand. His captivating red lips tugged at the ends as the mighty wind whipped his face in a frenzy and scattered his long black hair in almost all directions. Zhao Wei could perceive the forces of gravity, friction, and air resistance acting on his falling body. The heat, the wind, and even the situation made Zhao Wei think of Icarus. But he wasn't Icarus, he was a survivor. He may be ignorant sometimes, but that didn't mean he couldn't control his fate to some degree. When someone was calm during a crisis, it was easy to think things through without unnecessarily panicking. First, Zhao Wei used his own true force to shield his descent against the friction and air resistance. An ultra-thin film of celestial golden-colored energy surrounded his body like a protective layer against outside forces. I have never tried expelling massive amounts of energy through my acupoints, especially the Yangchuan acupoints. The rate at which I am expending my true force is high, and if it goes down to zero, then I will truly be a goner. Zhao Wei analyzed the uncontrolled output of his true force and overall expenditure. I have wasted so much energy. It's a pity the inner strength of the consolidated realm can't substitute the true force of the ascended realm. Focus. Zhao Wei calculated the distance between himself and the death-bound ground. From his calculations, he had about 10 seconds left before he would hit the ground. Within that time frame, it was enough for him to save himself. Control. It's all about control. True force is domineering and volatile compared to inner strength. And since I have recently achieved a breakthrough, I haven't gotten the chance to perfectly control its flow. Time was merciless, but Zhao Wei had a very high level of temporal resolution as he began to interact with the world in slow motion. Seconds or milliseconds were no longer relevant as he used microseconds to come up with a way to tame his true force, control its output through the Yangchuan Acupointment, and also facilitate a smoother overall circulation through every inch of his body. It was tasking but not hard. It didn't take long before Zhao Wei began to expertly quell the volatility of true force. It was previously like a stubborn crying child, but currently, Zhao Wei has made it to be an obedient child that will never leave his umbrella of control. Reduce the output of true force through the Chuan Acupoint. Maximize on short but release to facilitate an injury-free landing. Zhao Wei's mind was like a computer as he ran a flight simulation model of himself. The energy output through his Chuan Acupoint became smaller and smaller as Zhao Wei tried to use little force to achieve the most favorable effect. 1 second. From an outside point of view, Zhao Wei looked like someone who was surely going to splatter his brain matter all over the ground because of how hopeless his situation seemed. He was about 5 meters away from hitting the ground. Contrary to expectations, Zhao Wei didn't go through such an outcome. When his calm but handsome face was just mere inches off the ground, Zhao Wei's body abruptly stopped in midair as his arms spread over his head like someone about to swim. Phew, that was close. Like really close. Zhao Wei exhaled soundly as his face morphed into a crazy smile. Is this what they call mere inches away from death, haha? Zhao Wei laughed without restraint at the craziness and recklessness he had just gone through. Zhao Wei could feel his heart thumping loudly against his chest and the after effects of the dwindling adrenaline. Without thinking, Zhao Wei turned his body to face the sky before allowing himself to fall on the soft soil beside his courtyard garden. The soil was special and it wasn't under the usual category of soils known in his previous world. Zhao Wei felt as if he had returned to his childhood days as the soil fragments dirted his clothes and beautiful long hair. Is this what it meant to enjoy life and indulge in stupid things? Live the moment, Zhao Wei sighed as he relaxedly immersed himself in his surroundings. The fluttering of butterfly wings, the chirping of birds, the inaudible stampede of the busy ants, the incessant buzz of nectar bees, the elements in the air. Zhao Wei could hear and feel the nature around him at an unimaginably close level. His senses had become extremely ridiculous as he continued to advance in cultivation. Unbeknownst to Zhao Wei, the techniques with nature attributes which he had perfected and revised ever since he began his cultivation journey, began to covertly flow towards his dantian in the form of elements they each represented. Flowing stream represented the element of water and unpredictability. Freezing ice spear technique represented the ice elemental laws and it seemed to exist independently of the element of water though they shared the same essence. Water and ice were part of the same reversible dao, so both flowing stream and freezing ice spear technique joined together to form one singular essence. Instantaneous lightning movement represented the dao of lightning. Overworld thunder cry was a technique of the sound path. Relentless tornado kicks represented the wind elemental essence. Solar finger and eyes of the sun had the essence of the yang/fire laws. Eyes of the sun equals heat vision. Hell shadow death scythe incorporated the dao of shadows, the dao of assassination, and the dao of killing. The core essence was the shadow elements. Phantom steps and hell shadow death scythe were essentially on the same path. Primeval azure wood art carried the elements of wood. Primordial stellar energy body refining art surprisingly represented Zhao Wei's fate via the dao of stars, dao of body refinement, and dao of the unknown. Zhao Wei had yet to understand that his self-created body cultivation technique had already coalesced a special intent and it was guiding the foundational elements in his dantian. The essences of the 5 elements, fire, water, wood, wind, and metal, formed a circle in his dantian, seemingly restraining each other. The essences of shadow, sound path, and illusion floated above the 5 elemental circle and they seemed to disdain all the elements below them. Above all elements was the primordial stellar intent that lorded over all the elements that Zhao Wei had cultivated so far. An aura of mystery permeated every inch of Zhao Wei's dantian as these foundational elements were going to pave the way to an untrodden path of fortune and reality-breaking powers. What mattered most was the foundation that had been unconsciously made when he was still a low-level cultivator. Chapter 107, Elder Guan, A Path Unique to Me. Near Outer Sect Court, Grasswood Division, Alchemy Hall. A short elder, dressed in red robes, who had a ruddy appearance could be seen sitting in a meditative pose. In front of him, was a human-sized copper-colored cauldron that had mysterious patterns etched on its surface. On his chest was a golden medallion of superb workmanship that represented his status as the vice-head of the Grasswood Division. The medicinal aroma of pills and herbal plants was strong and lingered consistently in the air inside the alchemy hall. Grey mist, gaseous spiritual energy, roamed around the room, making the place the ideal environment for cultivation, especially for anyone at the ascended realm and above. Elder Guan exhaled a mist of turbid air before his eyes gradually opened. His brown eyes seemed to have seen through the rise and fall of kingdoms and empires for centuries. Truthfully, he was an old geezer who had lived to know how time passed by so quickly. His lifespan was very long compared to mortals and he could easily live through centuries. After all, he was a true spirit, an evolved being beyond the shackles of mortality. He could absorb the origin chi of heaven and earth to purify himself and strengthen his true spirit strength. I have recovered my exhausted mind and spirit after this meditation session. The sect is really greedy when it comes to spiritual pills. Elder Guan lamented silently. As the vice head in charge of alchemy and pill distribution in the sect, Elder Guan also had mandatory duties to fulfill. The said duties involved the refinement of spiritual tier pills that were even effective when consumed by true Lord rank experts. Even though his success rate wasn't high, at only about 10%-20%, the sect allowed him to work at his own pace since he was a master of alchemy. Elder Guan certainly occupied a very respectable position in the Broken Moon sect since those who pursued the Dao of alchemy were rare and very few in the whole continent. Stretching his hand, Elder Guan used his chi of true spirit to telekinetically lift the cauldron's lid. Then, 4 pills that were radiating a rich, concentrated medicinal aroma finally emerged and levitated midair. The pill surfaces were subtly glowing due to the light in the hall. Elder Guan removed a special ceramic pill bottle from his sleeves and with a wave of his hand, the 4 pills systematically entered into the bottle. Elder Guan then closed the pill bottle with an unimpressive cork which immediately sealed the medicinal aroma and preserved the medicinal power within. Beside him was a silver tray with similar bottles as the one he was holding in his hand. Elder Guan placed the new pill bottle there. Tisk, my alchemy skills have been in stagnation for quite some time. Production of pills in massive batches hasn't helped me in any way. A look of dissatisfaction and discontentment showed on his aged face as he thought. The Dao of alchemy is truly a cruel path, but despite its numerous difficulties, it surprisingly makes me even more determined to see where it would lead me. Elder Guan shook his head lightly, deciding to suppress the impatience cropping up inside his heart. Will I succumb to old age before I see the end of alchemy, or is it my fate to not see what I am not supposed to see? A sad smile spread on his face despite the intense determination inside his antique eyes. Levitating from the floor with his legs still cross-legged, Elder Guan absent-mindedly rubbed his brown beard as he remembered something. There is going to be an admission of fresh blood in about a month. I wonder if I will spot anyone of interest, someone capable of inheriting my mantle or bringing the Dao of alchemy to higher heights. A throaty laughter left his mouth, his voice reverberating all over the hall. The outer disciples and servants tending to the medicinal plants outside the alchemy hall wondered if Elder Guan was going crazy inside. What alchemy needs is a genius. There are so many cultivation maniacs in the world, but what the world is lacking is an absolute menace that would revolutionize the path of an alchemist. Elder Guan knew he was only dreaming, as the probability of coming across such an individual was less than 2%. Taking the numerous pill bottles from the silver tray, Elder Guan decided to visit the clan mission division. He wanted to pass on the pills for distribution and also take the time to reminisce about old times with his old friend. Maybe having a debate and enjoying some wine would prove helpful to his stagnant journey. Elder Guan was unaware that the said menace that could tread the Dao of alchemy to its limits was already inside the Broken Moon sect. And soon, he was going to have him under his tutelage, something that would fill him with pride until his very last breath. Plus or minus plus or minus plus or minus plus or minus. Oh shit, I didn't know that I would fall asleep while listening to the relaxing sounds of nature. Zhao Wei groaned in a sleepy, deep voice as he raised his upper torso using his elbows. Fallen leaves were lying on his body. Zhao Wei looked at them and with a swipe of his hand, he removed them. Zhao Wei then looked at the sky and realized that the sun had already been replaced by a full moon that cast its beautiful moonlight over the world. Silvery moonlight bathed Zhao Wei's form and the scene made him look like a celestial moon deity as his magnetic eyes swept a cursory glance at the surroundings. Gilu. The sound of his stomach rumbling brought Zhao Wei's mind back to reality as the pangs of hunger assaulted his palate. The sound of his super hungry stomach even made the seasonal cicadas pause their rhythmic buzz. Why do I feel like eating 2 whole bowls by myself? Zhao Wei touched his belly and felt that something was amiss with his body. Calming his mind, Zhao Wei used inner sight to examine his internal systems. 720 acupoints. I have already accomplished what I thought I could never achieve in a small amount of time. What kind of dogshit luck goo did I transmigrate with? Zhao Wei realized the truth of what had happened when he had been blissfully taking a nap. All the 720 acupoints inside his body had been opened, and within each acupointment was a small cyclone of true force. Another finding was inside his dantian. The 5 elements and the special elements that he had cultivated so far had coalesced into individual elemental essences. Zhao Wei gave himself a facepalm as he thought about the weird but positive changes. An enlightened glint shone in his eyes as he smiled foolishly. I see. Zhao Wei had already understood everything and what had to be done to conceptualize what he had in his crazy mind. The God Eye variant isn't the same as I once thought it would be. Oh mysterious cat, so you wanted me to forge what was unique to me. The God Eye variant was no longer connected to the so-called Akashic records and the omni-realities, forever cut off. Chapter 108, An Illusory Clipote, Implanting Potential Seeds. Ever since Zhao Wei got the God Eye variant as a transmigration perk from the virtually omnipotent entity, he had already factored in various possibilities. The miraculous ability to extract different eye abilities from realities in the omniverse was truly great, but it had its own limitations. It somehow limited one's ability to think outside the box or be ingenious, since it was free and hardly deserved. Zhao Wei understood he didn't deserve to get the God Eye variant, but he was grateful for his luck for things to have gone the way he had wanted. The thought of the mysterious cat, who had transmigrated him, taking away the perk or pulling a fast one on him, had been shelved deep within his mind. It was a power with no consequence, so why shouldn't there be some fuck-ups along the way? I am basically left with the first eye template reminiscent of the Hyga clan's Byakugan. Zhao Wei reminded himself. Hee, interesting. It seems I have been underestimating the primordial stellar energy body refining arts. Zhao Wei assumed a cross-legged posture. A serious expression adorned his face and an air of diligence and determination encapsulated his form. Zhao Wei felt he had been too relaxed for quite some time. Relaxing once in a while wasn't bad, but being lax for so long was bad for his overall mindset. He had been too full of himself, thinking that everything would naturally fall in line as it was supposed to be. And that was essentially being foolish and overly arrogant. It was understandable, since he was already only a human after all. Zhao Wei acknowledged his own mistakes, and he felt that he wasn't working hard enough. There was so much that he still didn't understand. I should cement the foundation I have gained. I don't want to be just a ripple in the waters of a lake. I want to shake the lake for an eternity. Space and time as absolute as they may be, I want to share their joys of absoluteness. Zhao Wei closed his eyes and concentrated his mind on his Danshan region. It was now that he was noticing that it looked like a tiny pocket dimension, and unsurprisingly, the notion itself felt like an overestimation to him. Even though his Danshan wasn't like an independent pocket reality, the probability of it becoming one in the future was possible. This is my Danshan, unbreakable like my will and ambitions. Zhao Wei soliloquized as he intensely studied the elemental essences, from the 5 elements to the special paths like shadow and illusion. They were in a state of disharmony as they were structurally different. The congealed essences were merely seeds, and Zhao Wei just had the task to nurture these seeds into something much more. But something that stood out in his Danshan was the magnificent and blazing primordial stellar intent, an embryonic crystallization of Zhao Wei's comprehension of his own body cultivation technique. Even though Zhao Wei had never seen someone or something with intent, he subconsciously knew the answer about what was happening due to the natural suppression the primordial stellar intent was emitting. The runic character representing his physique refinement path seemed to have evolved and opened the door leading to the realm of intents and wills. I don't know what level of power my body can erupt with at the moment. I have this weird feeling that I could easily take on anyone at the 6th sky of Ascended Realm and below without feeling pressure. Zhao Wei had a light frown on his face, and since he hadn't fought with anyone for quite some time, guesses would just remain as guesses. Also, just to test his theory, he couldn't go around asking random people to fight him. Now then. With a thought, Zhao Wei used his powerful mind to form an illusory tree that looked the inverse to the tree of life, Clipote. A cultivator's mind was their most powerful weapon during their fate-destroying journey. The will to live longer. The will to protect their loved ones. The will to grow stronger. They had the power to shape reality at the subconscious level. Just take for example how Zhao Wei was creating an illusory tree that wasn't supposed to exist in this reality. That was the power of imagination and will. Due to his current low-level power and little understanding, Zhao Wei could only, at most, create illusory creations. He had reached a level where he could turn unreality into reality. After the tree had dug its extensive roots at the floor of the Danshan, Zhao Wei meticulously guided the seeds, elemental essences, to the branches of the tree. The 5 elements were at the heart of the tree, interconnected through a runic circle. The seed of primordial stellar intent was at the uppermost branch like an emperor overseeing the masses. The special path seeds like shadow and illusion were slightly above the 5 elements. There is no strongest path, only the strongest martial cultivator. The goal of a cultivator wanting to comprehend the Great Dao is to treat all paths equally without bias. Zhao Wei's understanding of his own meaning continued to deepen, and he could already visualize a section of the ultimate path he was going to follow. With the potential I possess, it would be wise to implant as many seeds as I can onto these branches. Zhao Wei had a shadowy smile on his mouth as he muttered to himself. Hours passed and Zhao Wei used that time to increase his inner strength through meditation. To maximize the efficiency of his cultivation, Zhao Wei divided his mind into two or simply used parallel processing. On one side, he concentrated on his inner strength cultivation, on the other side, he scoured his mind for any information related to the basics of alchemy. He intended to consolidate his knowledge about plants, medical arts, and alchemy in general. He had a plan in mind that would enable him to be easily inducted into the Grasswood division, and his master, Hai Yun, was the key. Connections were very important. Just like that, Zhao Wei used the whole night to cultivate without rest, and the next morning, he decided to look for Master Hai Yun. Zhao Wei hoped his persuasion skills and sweet tongue would force Hai Yun to do his bidding. He was the devil, and the devil can never be denied. Chapter 109, Skepticism and Fruition of Plans. After going through the usual routine of early morning preparation, Zhao Wei finally decided to leave his residence. The servants assigned to him were diligent and dedicated to their work. Zhao Wei would always find everything he needed in order. And since he was easygoing, all the servants had come to sincerely admire and respect him from their hearts. It's also hardly a fact that mortals would always look up to immortals. Zhao Wei considered himself still a mortal despite the reverential gazes he always got from the servants. Anyone below the heavenly divine realm may as well be a mortal. Zhao Wei laughed to himself as he elegantly walked down the hill. He was dressed in plain white robes that made him look sacred and dignified. The specks of light in the air that shone over him increased his dazzling appearance to the ceiling. He looked transcendental, and an aura of tranquility oozed off his figure. Along the way, Zhao Wei earned himself a lot of attention and received a couple of greetings and sincere compliments from his fellow inner disciples. Almost all of them knew about him, even though he liked to remain indoors. His undeniably handsome appearance was a hot topic among the ladies of the inner court. Coupled with him being Elder Hai Yun's new disciple, Zhao Wei was surely a hot commodity. I wonder if Hai Yun will adjust his schedule to accommodate my presence. As someone that he values, I have a feeling that he would be more than willing to listen to me. Zhao Wei mildly thought. Elder Hai Yun's courtyard was to the northeast of his own residence, and Zhao Wei had to follow a winding path that led to different mountain ranges. The high-level elders each had their own mountains with the best feng shui. Each of the mountains had a heaven and earth spirit vein that constantly produced thick mists of spiritual energy. With such blessed environments, it wasn't strange that the mighty elders were usually immortalized and idolized. The air is fresh and invigorating as always, Zhao Wei noted. Even a mortal can easily extend their limited lifespan by staying in this place for a couple of months. Senior Brother Wei, it's good to see you. A 2-meter-tall guard with a baby face greeted Zhao Wei with cupped fists and his head slightly lowered. Although he didn't have any noticeable qualities, the muscular baby-faced guard exuded the aura of a peak 9th rank consolidated realm practitioner. A new guard? Zhao Wei thought, but didn't get curious. Zhao Wei returned the greeting with an amiable smile that easily won the other party's complete admiration. Is Master available? Zhao Wei casually asked. You don't have to worry, Senior Brother. Exalted Elder Hai Yun had already instructed me to allow you or Senior Brother Baimoi to enter his residence if you looked for him. Zhao Wei arched his brow. Okay. Hai Yun is quite sensible, Zhao Wei mused as he entered the courtyard. Zhao Wei saw Hai Yun floating at the top of the magnificent pond. He was sitting cross-legged and multiple swords were surrounding him, effortlessly forming an outstanding formation that looked like a blooming lotus flower. Hai Yun's eyes were closed and his hands were tightly interlaced below his chest region. Within the stillness of the swords exuding unbelievable sharpness, there was cataclysmic turbulence waiting to erupt and rip everything asunder. Sword chi, no, that's not it. This is unmistakably sword energy and massive amounts of it to boot. Zhao Wei was fascinated and studied the formation art that Hai Yun was displaying. Within his mind were thousands of sword techniques, and using them as reference his theoretical knowledge and comprehension of the Dao of the sword was surely extensive. Well, a true spirit realm expert is truly terrifying. Through studying the sword formation Hai Yun was displaying currently, Zhao Wei experienced flashes of himself dying over and over again with every attempt he made to reach Hai Yun. That was a precognitive sixth sense towards one's demise whenever they faced an opponent that was on a higher power stratum than them. Zhao Wei found it interesting and understood that he would be powerless against such potentially destructive sword energy. Zhao Wei, I didn't expect your visit so early. A cold voice sounded and broke the silence between the two. Hai Yun slowly opened his eyes and glanced at this disciple of his. The first thing he realized was the change in his aura and temperament. Surely, Yun had to swallow his pride and bitterly admit that Zhao Wei looked good, better than even him. He felt slightly jealous and nothing more. Anyway, that wasn't what glued his attention, or it would seem as if he was weird. What greatly astounded him was the signature energy present in those of the ascended realm. True force. His spiritual sense could pick up the subtle true force energy radiating off Zhao Wei's muscles and physique. Entering the ascended realm directly with physical strength, Yun showed numerous changes in his facial expressions, from amazement to shock, doubt, and happiness. After a few seconds, Yun composed himself and wore his usual indiscernible facial expression. "You genuinely surprised me." Yun spoke in a sincere tone. "I didn't expect you to reach the ascended realm that fast. Things happened when I had been under enlightenment." "It was a purely coincidental and lucky chance," Zhao Wei replied courteously, mixing truth with lies. Enlightenment. Yun's lips twitched incessantly. That was something that he could only wish for. Just how lucky was this disciple of his to encounter a sudden bout of enlightenment? "Tell me what you need," Yun asked straightforwardly, or else he would begin questioning the meaning of his existence and cultivation from hearing Zhao Wei's nonsense. "I have a favor to ask. Can you introduce me to both the Grasswood divisions and Clan Mission divisions vice heads?" Zhao Wei didn't beat around the bush and stated his intentions. Yun arched his brows with a questioning look on his face. "What do you need from them?" Yun asked in a serious tone. The two vice heads that his disciple wanted to meet were very important assets of the clan, and it wasn't easy to meet any of them under normal circumstances. But since he had a barely high position compared to them, they would surely give him face if he posed a request. Yun was extremely curious about Zhao Wei's query. What could he possibly need from those old fogies? Their services maybe. Yun formed some speculations inside his mind. "I have lately been interested in the pills that you had previously given me," Zhao Wei responded softly. "I want to learn alchemy." He then smiled innocently. Yun was extremely dumbfounded. Alchemy? This disciple was surely clueless and delusional. Did he think that the Dao of alchemy was created by his ancestors and it was easy to learn? Yun was somehow dissatisfied by Zhao Wei's choices, but seeing how unwavering his gaze was, Yun suppressed the little bits of dissatisfaction inside of him. Instead of giving him lengthy verbal advice, Yun decided it was better for Zhao Wei to experience what it meant to bite more than one can chew. There was a reason why the Dao of alchemy, as lucrative as it was, wasn't a mainstream path. "I will see to it. Tomorrow, you will have a meeting with the two vice heads." Yun promised, but inside, he knew that he was going to cough up some benefits first. "Thanks, Master." Zhao Wei immediately kowtowed in clear happiness, and as usual, he didn't forget to exaggerate. Yun was once again embarrassed by his disciple's shameless actions. "With that kind of face, don't you have any sense of shame or self-dignity?" Yun quickly kicked him out of his space lest he be embarrassed for eternity. Chapter 110, Law of Equivalent Exchange, Well of Mimir. After getting some form of assurance from Yun, Zhao Wei felt that his plans were soon going to be easily accomplished. It went smoother than he expected. Zhao Wei had expected Yun to act as a typical master and throw a fit about how greedy and delusional he was. Before even meeting Yun, Zhao Wei had already calculated the warnings that his master was going to spit. Was the process of amassing knowledge of different fields considered a flaw in one's journey of cultivation? Was the process of wanting to know whatever kind of knowledge one could get a sin? Zhao Wei understood that a master of many is a master of none, but he didn't care. He had the opportunity. He had the capacity and potential to integrate the already established paths of cultivation. Alchemy? Array? Puppet mechanisms? Talisman and inscriptions? Blacksmithing? Zhao Wei was determined to familiarize himself with the various daos that he was going to come across. After all, knowledge is power, and Zhao Wei trusted his wisdom to bring that knowledge to impossible heights. If Yun had turned him down with nonsense, Zhao Wei would have used other channels and means to meet those old men. Yun was just a suitable convenience. As Zhao Wei walked back to his courtyard, he suddenly felt his eyes sting. A pain that he could easily ignore assaulted his eyes. Could it be what I am thinking? Zhao Wei thought aloud as he resisted the urge to gouge out his eyeballs and look at the crux of the matter. The signs have already begun to showcase themselves. Zhao Wei increased his speed, and before long, he arrived at his residence. Standing at the center of his courtyard, Zhao Wei decided to hone his weapon arts. Zhao Wei noticed that the pain inside his eyes was no longer of concern. He couldn't predict when the change and evolution were going to happen, but he had a feeling that it won't be long. Closing his eyes, Zhao Wei entered a special state of serenity and extreme concentration. The metal elements present in the atmosphere began to coalesce in his right hand as they gradually formed a weapon that looked like a scythe. The scythe was crudely formed and about 2 meters in height. Scythe techniques were in the minority and it was very rare to find them in the library. But that didn't deter Zhao Wei from drawing references from other weapon techniques to modify and upgrade the Hell Shadow Death Scythe. The basics of all weapon arts are about using one's sense of balance. Zhao Wei mumbled to himself before he slowly began to swing the scythe. His moves were first unmotivated, slow, and predictable. From swinging, slicing, hooking, thrusting, blocking, and parrying, Zhao Wei demonstrated his strong foundation, and as time went by, he began picking up pace. Zhao Wei understood that the strength of a martial arts technique had nothing to do with its quantity of movements. His style was brief and didn't have high-sounding variations like most techniques. Initially, he was slow, but that changed immediately. His wrist strength was inconceivable as he swiftly swung the scythe through, utilizing its long curved blade that exuded terrifying sharpness. Through the accelerated combination of his foundational moves, Zhao Wei became unpredictable like water, as fast as lightning, and destructive like an agitated apocalyptic beast. Gales of furious winds came to be as a result of his intense, blurry hand movements. At times, Zhao Wei would use the metal scythe like the nunchaku, furious and relentless, and sometimes like a spear, piercing and domineering. Control and balance, with those two concepts taken into consideration and exercised to the zenith, Zhao Wei was like a fish in water. He smiled happily. He enjoyed becoming one with the scythe, and what he lacked was just an army of worthy enemies. The scythe represented death. Once swung, lives will be reaped. There were no compromises there. During the intense training session, Zhao Wei may have been wielding the scythe, but he was also using the forms of other weapons as they shared the same essence at their very core. His perfectly sculpted muscles relaxed and contracted hypnotically whenever he made a move. Clouds of steam escaped his pores as he worked his physique to the maximum. The scene was truly exquisitely beautiful. It was only late in the evening that Zhao Wei broke free from his maniacal trance. And it was due to his stomach protesting for some justice. Zhao Wei was as hungry as a ravenous wolf. Despite being hungry, Zhao Wei chose to take a bath first before wolfing down massive amounts of delicious monster meat. I didn't realize that after training my cultivation base would increase to the peak of the consolidated realm. Zhao Wei spoke unenthusiastically as he lay on an inclined bamboo chair outside. Some of the inner strength inside the Danshan has already begun being slowly converted to strands of true force. He was mildly surprised but didn't get excited about it. It was already nighttime. The night wind was cold and freezing, but it seemed to hit a wall whenever it tried to bite through Zhao Wei's skin. The sky was moonless, but it didn't lack infinite clusters of multicolored stars that twinkled excitedly. Zhao Wei admired the beauty of the stars in silence. He was low-key the scion of the celestial bodies. Every piece of information about the stars above the endless sky was perceived by his mind. It was natural and effortless. Lifespan. My current lifespan is like a star that's about to die, one moment shining brilliantly and the next moment, boom, a supernova. Zhao Wei chuckled as he lazily closed his eyes. After reading thousands of books and expanding my repertoire of knowledge, it is now that I have a better understanding of the law of equivalent exchange. Stellar nova, the one was just like the stars he was referring to. It gave him nigh invincible powers, but at a greater cost. Up to this moment, Zhao Wei had yet to find a solid solution for his quagmire. He had never stopped searching for answers, searching for possible solutions. What he needed was something absolute, something that could counter the dreadful drawbacks of stellar nova, the one. Such a life-saving trump card shouldn't be left unusable for long. The more trump cards he had, the better his chances of survival in almost any kind of situation. If only there was a well of Mimir in this universe, I would have gladly sacrificed something to get the answers I want immediately. Zhao Wei sighed internally. The year is nearly reaching its end, and soon, I will be 15. The next words that escaped his mouth were almost incoherent as he slowly drifted off to sleep. In his dream, Zhao Wei dreamt of eating the sun and eating the cheesy chunks of the moon. What a weird dream! Chapter 111, Botanical World. Author's note: I know, there are some background character exposition in this chapter of NPCs that may or may not appear again and irrelevant to the whole story. I am that self-aware. I was lacking motivation when I was writing this chapter after a long day of sleep-inducing lectures. Quite familiar, right? Bear with it till the next chapter. The following day, Zhao Wei got some good news. Yun truly didn't disappoint him, and the vice-head of the Grasswood division had acquiesced to his greedy manipulation, albeit indirectly. Yun had served his role as the middleman so perfectly. That morning Zhao Wei went through his usual morning routine, put on saintly snow-white robes, and happily rushed out of his residence. He carried himself with dignity and elegance. The people who looked at him thought he was a well-mannered, knowledgeable scholar descending down the mountain to enlighten the illiterate and frogs camping in the well. He looked kind and polite from the way he was greeting people left and right without bias. The aura of amiability around him had intensified. He seemed to be in high spirits, which also easily diffused to those he greeted. Truthfully, Zhao Wei was just putting up a convenient false image. That handsome junior brother seems to be in a good mood. A pink-haired pretty woman with curvy, child-bearing hips, that filled one with intrusive thoughts, giggled. She seemed to be in her early 20s as seen by the air of maturity surrounding her distracting figure. I just wish I could gobble him up and have him call me mommy. Ew, haven't you heard that he's only around 14 to 15 years old? Aren't you afraid the Discipline and Regulations division would come for you? A petite blonde with twin pigtails cringed in repulsion as she admonished her friend for harboring illicit and pedophilic thoughts. Tisk tisk, with such a delicious, perfectly sculpted divine figure that even puts older males in the dust, do you think I will care if he's 14? That junior brother can easily fill me up with generational seeds and impregnate me in one shot. The pink-haired beauty exaggeratedly breathed heavily, her D-cups rising and falling like tides on her chest. She couldn't even prevent the drool from escaping her mouth and dreamy heart-shaped pupils. Mo Yan, you are truly an irredeemable, perverted, pedophilic, demoness of all creeps. Yaya, the petite blonde with twin pigtails, chastised her friend before fisting her head. Ouch! Ouch! Why did you have to do that, you smelly brat? Mo Yan cried in pain and frowned heavily while rubbing at the bumpy swelling on her forehead. Can't I just express my love and lust in peace without thinking about consequences? Mo Yan grumbled and pouted like a stubborn child. Says the one who likes 14-year-olds. If I hadn't been your best friend for years, then all the young fresh boys out there would have fallen into your predatory trap. Then, they wouldn't have their normal lives after that. Yaya furiously pointed a finger at her without care. Mo Yan visibly cowered under Yaya's tyranny and strictness even though she was stronger than her in terms of cultivation base. Mo Yan was the third sky of the ascended realm while Yaya was at the peak of the second sky. That junior brother is no slouch. He can surely violate my rights and use me however he wishes. An attractive, effeminate young man in his mid-20s that was standing close to the two, languidly fluttered his fake long eyelashes. Luckily, his voice was only heard by the two. Both Mo Yan and Yaya stopped whatever they were doing, and looked at each other in shock before staring daggers at the girly young man. Damn, how can his nails be manicured better than even mine? Mo Yan cursed inwardly with slight jealousy. The girly young man felt terrified when he was under the intense gaze of those two. He suddenly felt a little lamb in front of a pack of wolves. He suddenly regretted speaking nonsense. Mo Yan gave Yaya a meaningful side glance. Yaya returned the same look. It was a secret communication, their own Morse code. Hey buddy, do you know the way to the Hall of Regulations division? Additionally, are you acquainted with the Elder of Disciplinary? Mo Yan's voice was low and threatening and full of extortion vibes. There was no mistaking. Deist friend, we are short on substandard crystals. I am afraid my mouth may slip something unforeseeable. Yaya upped the tempo. That young man became extremely terrified. I don't h. You have. The effeminate ceased any resistance and was trapped in a web of extortion due to showing weakness, something that the two ladies knew how to exploit. After all, it was not their first day on the job. This world is truly full of life and drama. Can't those side characters be any more inconspicuous? Zhao Wei, with his omnidirectional senses, witnessed everything even though he was miles away. He cursed at his own senses and curiosity. A minor? I am being treated as a minor? Is that a win or a loss? How silly of me! Zhao Wei laughed internally. Those three NPCs were lucky that he was impervious to verbal sexual innuendos and he wasn't going to waste his time bitching about how he was harassed. It sounded funny when such thoughts stemmed from him. He couldn't imagine himself suing the hell out of that woman and young man in front of the disciplinary hall. But if it had been a literal assault through kidnapping or such line of actions, then I don't think there would have been any problems with me playing the homicidal persona. After passing several mountains, Zhao Wei could finally see the utopia of alchemy. The Grasswood division seemed to be in a world of its own, a botanical world. The scent of different herbal plants of different origins and characteristics assaulted Zhao Wei's nose like a punch. The fields of medicinal herbs stretched far and wide, as if with no end. Of all the places that Zhao Wei had visited so far, the Grasswood division seemed to be the richest in terms of spiritual energy. The growth of medicinal herbs should be done in their most optimal environment with favorable conditions. Zhao Wei passed by a couple of outer disciples who were taking care of the herbs and dedication. They must have been guided on how to nurture and care for the growing herbs, Zhao Wei noted as he followed a path that led to the center of the mountainous region where the alchemy hall was located. I was instructed to go directly to Elder Guan's place of operations without meandering to other places. Zhao Wei was a little bit giddy if he had to be honest with himself. Standing before a huge ancient gate engraved with mysterious drawings of cauldrons, Zhao Wei looked so small. Taking a deep breath, Zhao Wei reeled in his emotions before announcing his presence. Chapter 112, Mission Passed. Long-term business opportunities. Amidst the pin-drop silence of the alchemy hall, two men looked at each other with interest, sizing up the other's physical features and upfront demeanor. The two were Old Man Guan and Zhao Wei. Old Man Guan sat cross-legged on a platform at the end of the hall. His face was old but still brimming with vitality and exuberance. His ancient eyes seemed to have bore witness to the vicissitudes of countless alternations of the seasons. He wore deep green robes embroidered with countless miniaturized versions of alchemical plants and a shiny identity medallion, representative of his sex authority, hung on his waist. The young man before him didn't look any different from other disciples, Old Man Guan noted casually. He had a century of experience and he had seen all kinds of beautiful men and women, especially when he had been a hot-blooded youth. And he understood that being good-looking didn't mean that that sense of perfection couldn't necessarily be translated to one's innate talent. Zhao Wei. That was the name the youngest elder, Hai Yun, had given him after he had inquired about the personal information of the disciple in question. Old Man Guan had little interactions with Elder Hai Yun, but he had been caught by surprise when the latter came to him with an unexpected recommendation. Elder Hai Yun wanted him to reach or advise his student in the Dao of Alchemy. How preposterous! How unbecoming! At first, Old Man Guan had felt that Elder Hai Yun was taking him for a fool. Where was it written that any Tom, Dick, and Harry could easily learn alchemy? The Dao of Alchemy was as broad as the martial way. It was only through calculated explanations and smooth coaxing from Elder Hai Yun that Old Man Guan came to understand the crux of the matter. Elder Hai Yun's personal disciple probably thought that he could tackle anything after having a little bit of success in his martial path. It was only after receiving various benefits from Elder Hai Yun for taking away some of his pill concocting time, did Old Man Guan relent to his requests. As lucrative and profitable as alchemy was, it really was a time-consuming and money-siphoning profession. For the untalented in the Dao of Alchemy, it would only leave them in despair and overwhelming depression after a failed venture. Elder Hai Yun had consistently praised the young man as an unconventional genius, and that had really caught Old Man's attention. Will the supposed genius be legitimate or just a misconceived fraud? Old Man Guan wondered in curiosity. Do you think the world moves according to your wishes and intentions? Old Man Guan didn't beat around the bush and immediately asked a question that came out rather harsh. Do you think the Dao of Alchemy is a joke as a path? Do you know how many geniuses I have seen go down the wrong path due to ignorance? Old Man Guan carefully observed the expressions on Zhao Wei's face, and with his spiritual sense nothing could escape his perception. He wanted to pressurize Zhao Wei with words and make him give up his simple outlook about the Dao of Alchemy. In addition, he was secretly trying to test him. Contrary to what Old Man Guan was expecting, Zhao Wei didn't react negatively to his harsh tone and only bowed respectfully with his hands cupped. Esteemed elder, how can a mere man like me control the way the world revolves? I acknowledge my inferiority in the face of the boundless Dao of Alchemy, Zhao Wei said in a meticulous tone, his voice neither hurried nor slow. He was taking his own sweet time to answer the eccentric old man before him. With his meta-understanding of Old Man Guan, how could he not know that the old man was merely testing his resolve? Elder, I am a scholar by nature, and when it comes to knowledge, I normally show no bias or preference. All variations of the daos that cultivators pursue are in essence the same, as they are part of the great Dao. There exists no strongest or most important path, only the path that leads the cultivator to self-actualization and conceptual understanding of their self. Zhao Wei finished with an innocent smile, his eyes blazing with unwavering determination and sky-high ambitions that could seemingly burn any obstacles to cinders. Old Man Guan felt drawn into those pure and intelligent silver eyes. Such untainted, headstrong, fiery ambitions filled his aged mind with nostalgia. The handsome youngster's relentless aura somehow reminded him of himself when he had been a mere youth who thought he could tackle everything by pursuing the Dao of alchemy. A scholar, hey? Such a person wouldn't be as ignorant as I had once thought. Old man thought as he absent-mindedly ran his chubby fingers down his thick brown beard. Maybe I should just give him a chance since Elder Hai Yun gave me some benefits. I have got nothing to lose anyway. In fact, this would be my first time tutoring someone claiming to be a scholar, an avid knowledge seeker. Old man Guan reached his own conclusion after some thoughtful consideration. I will give you an opportunity, and if you pass the test that I am going to give you, then I will be your temporary teacher. Old man Guan stated. But if you fail, I will kick your ass so hard for wasting my time and enthusiasm. Old man Guan then warned as he leaned forward and pointed his chubby finger at Zhao Wei. I promise that you won't be disappointed, teacher. Zhao Wei shamelessly declared with gusto. Humph. Old man Guan snorted loudly, pretending to be dissatisfied. Don't be so sure of yourself. And in an instant, his short figure blurred, and in the next moment, he appeared before Zhao Wei. So fast. It seems old man Guan isn't someone of the ascended realm like in the novel. How interesting. Zhao Wei mused. There is a place we have to go first before testing if you are an authentic genius or just a fraud, young man. Old man Guan smiled mischievously as he told Zhao Wei of the next course of action. Where are we going? Zhao Wei asked curiously, his face as clueless as possible. Of course, he already had an inkling of where things were heading. He couldn't be more sure. And if Zhao Wei was going to take that test, then the array master, vice head of the clan mission division, was definitely going to be there. Zhao Wei prepared himself psychologically since he was going to make these old geezers cough up blood, question their existence, and fight each other to take him as their disciple. Pretty cocky, isn't it? Moments later in the outer hall division, testing grounds of the sect. Inside an ancient building, two old men could be seen arguing passionately over something, more like somebody, since someone was standing before them. And that person was looking at them in amusement like how a child would enjoy an abrupt fight between two cocks. It was Zhao Wei, and he had passed the 9-picture array by simply exceeding the expectations. Unlike the protagonist, he was establishing himself, rooting himself deep into both the array and alchemy division. How could he pass up such an excellent business opportunity? What a good show of camaraderie. Zhao Wei felt like yawning as those two old geezers have been going at it for quite some time. He was waiting for them to tire out before proposing a favorable solution for both. All in all. Chapter 113, Troublesome Old Geezers. Old Geezer Guan, I have to thank you for bringing me such a more than capable disciple. This old man couldn't be grateful for your undisguised act of kindness. A thin middle-aged man with a receding hairline, dressed in black and white robes, laughed loudly. The thin middle-aged man was Vice Head Zhang, the one in charge of the clan mission division and a certified array master, an almost irreplaceable workforce just like a master alchemist. Just what level of shamelessness are you trying to portray by openly stealing my disciple, you bald piece of bones? Old man Guan retaliated with sharp words. Black lines of anger formed on Vice Head Zhang's shiny forehead, evidently unhappy about the emotional jab from his long-term friend even though he had already heard those words for the umpteenth time. Old coot, at least this old man is more handsome than you. Why are you getting rounder and rounder with each passing year? Vice Head Zhang couldn't be left behind in terms of spitting venom. Why you? Your whole family is round, your whole clan is round, even your ancestors are round. Old man Guan cussed out angrily to the point where he was spitting saliva. Vice Head Zhang puffed out his chest in extreme anger and old man Guan also imitated him. And then like a bunch of brazen he-goats, they clashed using their heads. Where was the established face and dignity of a master alchemist and an array master? How could the respectable vice heads act with such childish impropriety? Zhao Wei dramatically rolled his eyes and felt like giving himself a mighty face palm. Through the way they were behaving, Zhao Wei could infer that, at least, their friendship should have started when they were mere youths or maybe during their childhood. When they are in public, they maintain a dignified appearance and conduct themselves with decorum. No one would easily guess that the respected figures they admire can be so childish and brutish when conflicts arise. Not wanting them to waste any more of his precious time, Zhao Wei coughed loudly to gather their attention. His action proved useful as the two vice heads returned to their seats with embarrassed expressions. They wished they could hide their faces there and then. Ahem, you weren't supposed to witness such an unsightly scene of us making a fool out of ourselves. Vice Head Zhang released a fake cough as he tried to make the situation more serious than it previously was. Zhao Wei, forget everything you saw in this room. Whatever you saw remains here, are we clear? Old man Guan added, his cheeks reddening like tomatoes. The image he had built should have already crumbled in the eyes of the young, once-in-a-lifetime genius. My lips are sealed and I think I just turned blind from seeing you two trying to burst heads with each other. With these conditions, the probability of me snitching anything is pretty much non-existent. Zhao Wei spoke in amusement. The two vice heads almost choked on their breaths as Zhao Wei's words mercilessly stabbed their hearts and consciences. Too ruthless. The two old geezers fell silent. Zhao Wei mildly smiled. The initiative was his now. He currently held the reins of the conversation. Instead of endlessly arguing over whom I should pick as my master, isn't it better and more convenient if I study under both of you? At the end of it all, both of you will feel proud to have taught someone with limitless prospects. Zhao Wei smoothly resolved the simple conflict. After all, the resulting outcome was going to be a win-win situation for the vice heads and Zhao Wei himself. Both Old Man Guan and Vice Head Zhang looked at each other, their eyes easily communicating whatever they had in mind. It's a brilliant idea. I am going to pretend I didn't hear that one cocky line of yours. Vice Head Zhang smiled in satisfaction as he gazed at the interesting junior before him. He was the first person to ever decipher the whole 9-picture array without as much sweating or struggling. 9-picture array was an ever-changing model that he had prepared together with other array masters. It held the essence of various experienced minds and its level of profundity was something that had forced many disciples to stop only at the 3rd picture. Fully deciphering and interpreting the masterpiece of a couple of array masters was something beyond the realm of genius. Vice Head Zhang wondered what sort of luck Elder Hai Yun had to have such a monstrous individual as his disciple. Even so, he couldn't wait to impart the ways of array construction to the eager youngster. Unlike most, Zhang didn't see any problem with Zhao Wei pursuing whatever he wanted. There wasn't a rule stating that one could only follow one path. The prerequisite was if you had the capability to continuously set your adventurous spirit ablaze and keep going forward. Elder Zhang reminisced that once he had been such a wild, adventurous spirit, but reality had a way of slapping people's faces into self-awareness. Between the Dao of Alchemy and the Dao of Arrays/Formation, which are you going to start with? I'd recommend you to begin with pill making. You'll get rich quickly compared to dabbling in arrays, Old Man Guan coaxed Zhao Wei, all the while not forgetting to playfully tease Old Zhang. Stinky old man, who told you array masters are poor peasants? Young boy, don't listen to his shriveling nonsense. Begin with the study of arrays, and before long, you will easily be commanding heaven and earth. Vice Head Zhang spouted nonsense with a straight face. Commanding heaven and earth via setting up arrays? That was a realm of formation attainment that he had yet to achieve in this lifetime, and the probability was extremely abysmal. In fact, it deserved to be a myth. Old Man Guan was preparing for a comeback, but Zhao Wei acted fast. I think I would start with alchemy, as it was the first thing I hadn't wanted to pursue after seeing the wonders a pill can do. Zhao Wei's tone carried finality. There wasn't room for dilly-dallying. And seeing how stone-faced he was, the two vice heads knew not to stretch the subject. Tisk tisk, you are truly lucky, Old Man Guan. Vice Head Zhang clicked his tongue in feigned dissatisfaction. I have always been lucky, my friend. Old Man Guan flashed a smug, toothy grin. Your turn will arrive. Just learn to be patient and steady, hee hee. Seeing the two old coots going at it again, Zhao Wei could only sigh to himself. If it weren't for his thirst for more versatile knowledge, he wouldn't have wanted to engage with these troublesome old-timers. Chapter 114, Pill Master Yun Yao, a Dangerous Woman. Word count 1956. After the almost inexistent issue between the two vice heads was solved, Old Man Guan decided to right away begin teaching the ins and outs of what it entailed to be an alchemist. This time round, Old Man Guan didn't take Xiawei Wei back to the alchemy hall but led him through a spiraling path that led to a magnificent mountain peak. The Grasswood division boasted an array of stand-alone mountain peaks, but the one they were walking towards stood out, its majesty veiled by cotton-like clouds, adding to its awe-inspiring allure. It reminded Zhao Wei of something like the Theological Tower of Babel, but in hindsight, it was almost 30 times taller than Mount Everest. To save time, Old Man Guan silently took hold of Zhao Wei's arm and without his permission, he began to levitate both of them into the air. Old Man Guan knew he was being impatient, but so what? He had finally clinched himself a monstrous genius with alchemical potential, so why shouldn't he be impatient and filled with happiness? Hey, old man! Zhao Wei grumbled in a barely audible voice. Call me teacher. Old man Guan reprimanded him as he increased his flight speed. Okay, okay. Teacher. Zhao Wei shouted over the howling wind even though he could easily isolate his sound waves from outside interference if so he wished. Zhao Wei just wanted to annoy someone. Old man Guan felt his eardrums tingle and ring repeatedly as if they were about to be blown into kingdom come. And well, Zhao Wei's mischievous ploy did take effect. Old man Guan's facial expression creased into a legendary frown like that of an elder from Mount Tai sect who had just experienced an utter disrespect of the century from an ignorant junior. Don't ever shout like that. Like ever. Old man Guan warned while clicking his tongue in annoyance. His old heart couldn't handle any more of that shouting from Zhao Wei. I can hear you just fine even if you talk in a muffled voice. He then reminded him gently. Old man Guan couldn't really find fault in this crazy disciple of his. Sorry about that one, teacher. Zhao Wei offered an apology although his eyes had an amused glint. Zhao Wei felt that he could teach Loki, the god of mischief, a thing or two about messing around with Odin, Allfather of the Nine Realms, during his Odin sleep. A cultivator's auditory senses were sharp and sensitive, especially those of higher cultivation like old man Guan. Zhao Wei knew very well what he had done. Sorry, not sorry. Zhao Wei thought inwardly as they traversed past voluminous, woolen white clouds. But during the flight, Zhao Wei took his time to observe the energy flow, the circulation of the qi of true spirit. He was kinda curious about how those of the true spirit realm interacted with the heaven and earth origin to maintain flight. He was also fascinated by the special properties of the true spirit's strength. Did it have some anti-gravity effects that could facilitate flight, or were his speculations just too far-fetched? Was it a law or maybe an element in the atmosphere? We have arrived, Zhao Wei. Old man Guan's throaty voice immediately interrupted his reverie. Zhao Wei just released a simple "oh" as he began to inspect the new environment. There were quite a few large houses and immortal caves created on various parts of the peak. The scent of medicinal pills and high-grade medicinal herbs permeated the fresh air at the peak. The place kind of looked like a pill factory, Zhao Wei noted in amusement. A couple of individuals dressed in almost similar robes as old man Guan's could be seen walking about in a hurry while some seemed to be having educational discussions about the Dao of alchemy. These people also varied in terms of age, as some looked like they were in their 20s, 30s, and 50s. Unfortunately, there wasn't someone of the same age as Zhao Wei. A haven for aspiring talents of alchemy, Zhao Wei casually commented, to which old man Guan smiled with pride. This is where you will find most of the master alchemists. Of course, there is a difference in seniority, experience, and skills among each master alchemist. Aren't I the living persona of all three? Old man Guan lightly joked as he played with his thick brown beard out of habit. Zhao Wei noticed this habitual action. He had noticed it ever since he met the old man. That's what terrifying observation skills do. It was both a curse and a gift. Teacher, I didn't know that you liked to blow your own trumpet, Zhao Wei calmly spoke. One mustn't be overly prideful and observe humility, but that doesn't mean that a person can't be allowed to let loose during several occasions. Old man Guan explained as he led Zhao Wei to a huge, ancient pagoda whose architectural design looked classy. He received several greetings and bows from the other alchemists which spoke volumes of his status and seniority. Zhao Wei himself became the subject of extreme curiosity among the master alchemists as they wondered what his identity was to walking behind vice head Guan, a very prominent figure in the society of alchemists. Of course, Zhao Wei's not-so-low-profile otherworldly face and Greek god-esque physique was something that couldn't be ignored. Standing in front of the pagoda's door, old man Guan removed the golden medallion from his waist and hovered in the air. In just a few seconds, the doors slowly opened wide for the two. Zhao Wei arched his brows, wondering what the hell had just happened. Old man Guan noticed his surprise and released a short laugh. Zhao Wei's expression looked goofy and it involuntarily made him want to just relieve his lungs. There's an invisible locking array surrounding the whole pagoda and the medallion I hold is inscribed with a special microarray that acts as the key. Old man Guan explained casually. These are old man Zhang's handiwork. Truly fascinating. Zhao Wei commented with genuine interest showing in his vibrant silvery grey eyes. Humph, you have yet to truly see the fascinating things in the world of alchemy. Old man Guan proclaimed with vehemence. Zhao Wei almost rolled his eyes but restrained himself. The two soon followed a hallway that led to a rich botanical garden that brimmed with a variety of exotic-looking herbs. The sweet herbal scent hit Zhao Wei's olfactory senses like a tsunami. Amidst the herbal wonderland, stood a figure, more accurately, it was a mature woman of extreme beauty. She had fiery dark red silky hair that tumbled all the way to her thin waist, a waist that beckoned the hands of a man to gently hold onto it. Her gentle eyes were hazel with green fleeks, and in this rich botanical world of mismatched colors, made her seem natural as if she was a part of that beauty. Her stylish dress was a mix of red and green, different from the standard alchemist outfit, and it hugged her curvaceous figure in just the right places. She also exuded a mature aura that could make young men go bonkers over her. Yet, she had that Oni-sama vibes or era kind of thing going on. When Zhao Wei's eyes subtly wandered to her soft, red moist lips, he sincerely thought that they were every man's dream. Kissable end. All of a sudden, she turned her head, pausing her actions, and looked at Zhao Wei. Her hazel eyes met unknown silvery ones, attractive and sexy. They reminded her of the moon, the stars, and an untamed storm. There was surprise and curiosity in the woman's eyes as they assessed the indifference of the extremely handsome young man. The woman then turned her attention to the old man standing beside the unknown Adonis. "Greetings, old man Guan, I honestly didn't expect your arrival." The beautiful woman addressed old man Guan with respect as she began to walk towards them. She was like a vixen, tempting and full of seduction as subtle as it was. "Haha, Pill Master Yun Yao, how have you been?" Old man Guan returned the greeting. "Where have I heard the name Yun from?" "Yun? Oh, she must be that princess's aunt who was only mentioned a few times before disappearing into obscurity." Zhao Wei rummaged through the recesses of his memories and finally came to a realization. "Just a bit of this and that end." Yun Yao answered with a breathtaking smile before she deliberately gazed at Zhao Wei. Old man Guan caught the message and hastily began to introduce his disciple. "Meet my new disciple, Zhao Wei, an unpolished gem that could very well shake the foundation of the world of alchemy." Old man Guan spoke vividly with satisfaction. He seemed to be holding Zhao Wei in high regard. Zhao Wei found it embarrassing to be praised like that, but technically, old man Guan's words weren't just mere lies. Yun Yao looked at Zhao Wei with doubts showing on her devastatingly beautiful face. From the words unpolished gem, Yun Yao had already put two and two together. Zhao Wei was probably a novice, or he had yet to truly step into the Dao of alchemy. The young man looked younger than her niece, Yun Yao noted with wonder. To receive such high-sounding praise from a respectable and experienced figure like Vice-head Guan, there was something certainly special about the young man. Yun Yao decided to preserve her doubts for the time being and take a wait-and-see approach. It was then that a funny idea cropped up in her mind. "Old man Guan, I hope you won't mind leaving the young man with me for a short period. He has piqued my curiosity." Yun Yao proposed, her gleaming eyes never leaving Zhao Wei. "This?" A troubled look formed on old man Guan's face. He wondered what Yun Yao wanted to do with his dear disciple, but seeing her puppy, persuasive facial expression, old man Guan gave in. He decided to trust Yun Yao as he had known her for quite some time. 3 days at maximum. Old man Guan gestured with 3 outstretched, fat fingers. "Don't worry, old man Guan. Your disciple will be in safe hands." Yun Yao smiled. "Isn't that right, young man?" she asked Zhao Wei as if looking for some sort of assurance, or was it sarcasm? Her voice was soft and pleasant, capable of melting through the defenses of a man. "I am not looking for a Dao partner. Fight the demons, Zhao Wei." Zhao Wei recited fervently inside his mind. The woman was dangerous, but he liked dangerous. Zhao Wei thought that it wouldn't be bad to use her as a means to temper his mind and Dao heart. "It will be a pleasure, Miss Yun Yao." Zhao Wei mustered up one of his signature killer smiles, which caught the vixen unprepared as she became lost for words for a few moments. "You should address me as Pill Master Yun Yao." Yun Yao warned with a stern expression on her face. Old man Guan felt awkward. The atmosphere didn't feel right, but he couldn't put a finger on what was wrong. He quickly excused himself and then left the two to their own devices. After old man Guan left, Yun Yao's expression changed. "Continue calling me Miss Yun Yao. It's been a long time since I was addressed as such." Zhao Wei was rendered speechless. This woman is truly a piece of work, he thought as he nodded. Chapter 115, Introduction to Alchemy 101. Author's note: some backstory, some banter, some Dao discussion, more like education, and me putting you on edge. And some romantic goading, my misleading techniques, illusory domain expansion. The fact that her sensual aura and drop-dead gorgeousness affected him, made Zhao Wei slightly be on guard. The situation bore testimony that he was still bound by the 7 emotions and 6 desires. It defined his character as a human. Zhao Wei found it interesting. Zhao Yufei had her own charm and level of beauty since she was an important character already anchored to the fate and timeline of the universe. If Zhao Yufei was a budding lotus flower yet to bloom and showcase its endpoint beauty, grace, and brilliance, then Yun Yao was a breathtaking mature peony, spreading its iridescent lights in a field of flowers, thus captivating the hearts of men. Her charm was intense, such that most men would willingly die under the said peony flower in the process of professing their unrequited love. Zhao Wei remembered such a saying back on Earth, and there were even poetic compositions based around the peony. All in all, he wasn't there to admire and fantasize about a seemingly untouchable beautiful woman, but to achieve a greater purpose, to enrich his ever-changing journey with almost limitless knowledge, wisdom, and enjoyment. As beautiful as Yun Yao was, Zhao Wei already knew how to show restraint when the time called for it. Now tell me, young man, how did old man Guan find you, the supposed unpolished jade? Yun Yao crossed her arms, a simple action that made her breasts overstrain against the fabric of her dress. Her enticing cleavage was all but hidden. Zhao Wei saw everything, and it was only through sheer will that he refrained from activating any of his helpful eye abilities. Why are you asking? Does it really matter? Zhao Wei countered with a casual smile. He couldn't just answer everything that he was asked like an obedient little boy. Also, the woman in front of him seemed like the type to always get whatever she wanted. Alright, smart pants. You just gave me a good reason to put you through a series of tests. Yun Yao smirked mischievously, pretty much unconcerned by Zhao Wei's unsavory reply. Unpredictable, Zhao Wei smiled internally as he tried to get a read on her. I presume you are like a newborn baby in the Dao of Alchemy. You know of its existence, yet you still don't know anything. Yun Yao's aura shifted to that of an experienced master alchemist as she examined Zhao Wei. You don't know anything about nurturing herbs and the creation of pills, right? She guessed, more like she already had an already prepared answer for the question itself. Your words are on point, Miss Yun Yao, Zhao Wei answered straightforwardly. Yun Yao smiled widely after hearing the young man's deep and lethal voice. Such a voice was perfect for murmuring sweet nothings that can easily trap both young and more experienced women in a web of infatuation and love. She had lived a sheltered life when she was still a child back at the Imperial Palace, and when she got admitted into the Broken Moon sect, Yun Yao came to realize her passion for herbal plants and subsequently, the noble art of alchemy. She hadn't had the time for romance or one-time trysts as she immersed herself in the Dao of Alchemy. She didn't realize at first, but when she became a master alchemist, she was already nearing her mid-30s and the thought of men had become insignificant. Despite being in her 30s, Yun Yao felt that she was still in her early 20s, seemingly not to have aged a single day. Her cultivation talent, though not as exaggerated as those of the crowned genius disciples, had enabled her to reach the peak of the 6th sky of the ascended realm. This made her status to be quite special in the Grasswood division, and she was regarded as some sort of prodigy despite her reluctance and aversion towards such titles. Alchemy is a broad subject, and before jumping straight into the pill creation part, you will have to consider the origin of the said pills, the medicinal ingredients. Yun Yao shook her head lightly, to get rid of her reminiscent thoughts, and began to explain some simple but important information to Zhao Wei. The commonly known ingredients are the medicinal herbs, as they make up 98% of the pill depending on the variation of the pill being made. Zhao Wei listened carefully while nodding, his eyes glued on Yun Yao's eyes to show that she had his mind and focus. Nothing seemed to matter around him when Zhao Wei maintained eye contact with Yun Yao. Even for a veteran alchemist like her, Yun Yao felt slightly embarrassed and affected by his dedicated concentration. The way he held eye contact could give a woman the wrong signal, quite easily misinterpreted as being wanted. The remaining 2% may be constituted by unique parts of the demonic beasts, unique heavenly materials and earthly treasures, or even something that stems from the self. Yun Yao finished her explanation. Zhao Wei found her knowledgeable about the Dao of Alchemy even though she had only shared some basic information. From a seed to a young sprout, and finally to a mature herb, it is important for an alchemist to experience and go through the journey of the herbs as they mature, at least 2 to 3 times if possible. Well, Oni-sama, I am not going to stand around and nurture a herb for thousands of years, and that is me choosing the middle ground. Zhao Wei showed a confused face as those thoughts ran through his mind. Yun Yao laughed with mirth in her eyes after noticing Zhao Wei's comical expression. Her laughter was like a beautiful piece of immortal music, soothing and gentle. You must be thinking about exaggerated numbers, right? I know the feeling, as I was once as confused as you are right now during my alchemy apprenticeship. Yun Yao smiled as she unfurled her arms from her chest. She then began to slowly walk around the beautiful garden of multicolored herbs. Each of her steps was calculated and careful as she didn't damage any medicinal herbs. She carried herself with the demeanor of an expert herbalist, showing that she truly cared for the plants. Today, I am going to show you how to catalyze the growth of a herbal seed, the origin of it all. Yun Yao gently declared. It's an uncomplicated technique I came up with after countless hours of sleepless nights and arduous research. No one specifically knows about it, and it seems you are going to be the first and the last person that is aware of its existence. Why me though? It's not like Zhao Wei was against the idea of learning something new, but why should he be given such a good thing when they barely knew each other? Phew, will you believe me if I say it's because you are extremely pleasing to the eye and I like you? Yun Yao unashamedly proclaimed. Who will believe that nonsense? Zhao Wei showed a stoic expression as he voiced his disbelief. The shamelessness of the woman. You are a fun person to mess around with, Zhao Wei. Yun Yao revealed a toothy grin, her flawless teeth being laid out in the open. Anyway, before you experience my technique, there are some foundational books that you need to read and internalize first. Please come with me. Yun Yao suddenly changed his expression into a serious one as she began walking towards an opened door in the north. Zhao Wei nodded before following her. Break even one leaf of a herb and you will be stuck as my slave for an eternity. Yun Yao issued a strict warning without even looking back. As if you can live for that long. Zhao Wei almost rolled his eyes but heeded her warning without question. Chapter 116, Interesting Interactions. Yun Yao finally led Zhao Wei through a thick mahogany door that led into a study room. A well-crafted huge black desk stood opposite the entrance and a seat was behind it. There were both opened and unopened voluminous books spread chaotically on the desk surface. Sheets of roughly scribbled notes lay sprawled atop the books, further enhancing the state of disarray. This is a person who is dedicated to their course. It's truly interesting meeting someone with the essence of a scholar, Zhao Wei thought as his eyes analyzed everything in a matter of seconds. He even felt a subtle admiration for the hard-working female alchemist. On both sides of the spacious study room, in front of the desk, were tall shelves brimming with numerous books, manuscripts, and even files. Zhao Wei used X-ray vision to scan through the shelves and inferred that they were a mixture of alchemy manuals, ancient scrolls, and cultivation notes, though books geared towards alchemy were in the majority. Zhao Wei inadvertently smelled the air and noticed that it had two distinctive scents, one that belonged to Yun Yao and one that came from the books. The amalgamation of those two scents created something that was overwhelmingly pleasant, sweet, and hot. Zhao Wei had the urge to wantonly rummage through every book inside the study room. His adherence to basic respect and civility acted as a deterrence to such an impulsive behavior. As Zhao Wei was lost in thoughts while scanning the shelves, he remained oblivious to the watchful hazel-green eyes of Yun Yao. Yun Yao leaned against the desk as she studied every contour, up to the very minute details, of the beautiful man's perfect face. Unconsciously, she licked her lips when she narrowed her inspection to his inviting damnable lips. What am I thinking even? I am no longer an infatuated little girl of the same age as him. Yun Yao reminded herself as she shook her head to dismiss those tempting thoughts. To her understanding, Zhao Wei felt like a forbidden fruit, something that if she risked her chances to take a bite from, then the consequences would be unimaginable for her. Hey, Earth to Mr. Zhao. What are you zoning out for when you have the chance to be alone in a room together with the most beautiful woman in existence? Yun Yao interrupted, her narcissistic remark earning a small fake cough from Zhao Wei. It's supposed to be the other way round. You are the one who should be feeling honored, don't you think? Zhao Wei casually winked. Yun Yao's cheeks flushed as she puckered her lips in displeasure. There was a stifling silence for a few seconds and tension in the room intensified. It was hard to know what was going on inside the minds of the two individuals. Well, this is awkward. I think there were books that I was supposed to give you. Yun Yao chuckled awkwardly while her dainty finger fiddled around with a strand of dark red hair, sticking out on her rosy cheek. Zhao Wei watched her in amusement. He found her embarrassment and slight discomfort cute. It blended quite well with her mature aura. Yun Yao walked to the huge shelf on the left and as if she already knew what she was looking for, she expertly and gently removed two books from separate sections. They were titled, Beginner's Guide for Pill Making and Pill Flame Heart Manual. Yun Yao wasn't finished as she leisurely strolled to the opposite shelf and methodically, took another two books that were physically bigger, dimension-wise, compared to the previous two. I recommend reading through these 4 books to have a solid foundation when you start your journey on the unending road of alchemy. A wicked glint flashed in Yun Yao's eyes as she passed on the 4 books to Zhao Wei. You are too naive, woman. Zhao Wei smirked inside his mind. How could he not understand the mischief hidden behind Yun Yao's calm expression? Beginner's Guide for Pill Making, Pill Flame Heart Manual, 10,000 Plants Illustrations and Comprehensive Guide to the Art of Poisons, Poison Sutra. Zhao Wei quickly read through the titles of the 4 books in his hands before looking at Pill Master Yun Yao. Thank you, Pill Master Yun Yao. Zhao Wei said innocently in appreciation, his voice and tone as genuine as a baby's first words. Yun Yao looked at Zhao Wei with furrowed brows, not understanding why she was being thanked so sincerely. Yun Yao felt as if the brat was trying to play with her. Humph, thank me only after reading and comprehending the texts from those books. She unknowingly found herself pinching Zhao Wei's ear, and only after a few moments did she notice her peculiar actions. Zhao Wei wore a dumb expression as if not registering what had just happened. Not wanting to stay any longer in the same room with the hunk, Yun Yao excused herself and left, saying that she would come later as she had to make some important pills. Zhao Wei looked at her retreating curvy figure before she loudly closed the door. Well, what a surprising turn of events. Yun Yao, Yun Yao. Zhao Wei muttered her name silently. Who would have believed that she was the same Yun Yao described in the original novel? She seemed different in a good way. She was confident, deep-rooted, and kind of cheeky at times. She truly had a long-lasting impact on someone's memories if you got the chance to interact with her on a personal level. Deep down, Zhao Wei knew that there was yet more to unveil about her. Smiling to himself, Zhao Wei walked over to the desk and gently placed them above it. He then unceremoniously sat on the comfy seat that had the unmistakable scent of Yun Yao. This seat would have served well as a pervert's object of obsession. Zhao Wei scratched his chin as a momentary thought crossed his mind. And then, without further dilly-dallying, he began to read through the books. He chose the Beginner's Guide for Pill Making as his first read since it was the thinnest of the bunch. In actuality, Zhao Wei would have started with any book. The book wasn't as shallow as one might have thought it to be. The theme of the discussion was the basic skills used in pill concoction and important factors to note during the process of extraction of the herbal essences, mixing, subtleties of control, and the finality of pill congealment. Several ink drawings demonstrated a figure practicing all the vital steps of pill concoction. As he comprehended the essence behind the Beginner's Guide for Pill Making, Zhao Wei felt as if he was embodying the figure drawn inside the book. The strange feeling was akin to that of a virtual reality simulation where one can experience all sensations. Pill concoction emphasized the harmony of various elements inside the medicinal herbs. Zhao Wei spoke to himself, he was arriving at his own understanding. In just a few minutes, Zhao Wei finished internalizing the contents of the first book and jumped to the next, Pill Flame Heart Manual. The Pill Flame Heart Manual expounded more on the flames used in the process of pill concoction. What level of temperature should the flames be maintained at? How intense should flames be? What level of control should one exercise when handling the alchemical flames? What type of coals or combustible materials were more suitable as sources of flames? The new knowledge was truly interesting. Even though the book didn't have any ink drawings or demonstrations, it evoked a heavy sense of imagination from Zhao Wei during the immersion. Time flew very quickly, and after an hour, Zhao Wei had fully read, understood and internalized the concepts behind the 4 books. 10,000 Plants Illustration? What was that? Too little. Zhao Wei lamented that they were just too little to sate his greedy mind. Zhao Wei understood that the 10,000 plants illustrated in that book were merely the icing on the cake, since who could say that they knew everything about the innumerable herbs hidden in the universe? Maybe there is a reason why it only serves as a foundational book for aspiring alchemists. He mused. This only serves to fuel my curiosity towards the treasures scattered all over the fan universe. Won't it take a lifetime to harvest them into my future storage ring, haha. Anyway, Zhao Wei felt that he was ready to formally begin concocting pills of his own. And, he was prepared for failures, a couple of surprises, or totally outdoing himself in the process. Why are you spacing out for, brat? The door creaked open, and a beautiful woman with an exhausted expression entered the room. Zhao Wei smiled wickedly. It was time to take Yun Yao through a roller coaster ride of emotions. Yun Yao arched her long brows with a questioning look, wondering what Zhao Wei was smiling for. I think I should also tell her to give me a place where I can practice my alchemical arts. Chapter 117, Shaking Hands with the Devil. Author's note, chapters are getting longer, hey? I'm trying to flesh out my characters somehow, Zhao Wei included. So the plot may get slow, then peak and then go slow again. As you might have noticed, I am concentrating on characters that were not given enough literary time. Also, I want to make Zhao Wei evolve character-wise instead of just being a maniacal scholar that thirsts after knowledge. I enjoy writing about Yun Yao and all these side characters. They will be drama, a little bit, I swear, drama mama. WC 2.01k. Oh, I was just thinking about you. It seems I am unable to get you out of my mind. What kind of spell have I been afflicted with, I wonder? Zhao Wei said jokingly while rubbing his chin, his sharp gaze never leaving the beautiful figure in front of him. Yun Yao momentarily paused her steps as various expressions showed on her face. There was surprise, shyness, anger, and doubt. She didn't know what to feel about Zhao Wei's reply. Even though she knew he was only merely joking as it was in his nature, Yun Yao's heart thought otherwise as it nearly missed a beat. I should really be strict with this naughty boy or else, I fear I am going to be swept away by his pace. Yun Yao reminded herself as her demeanor and aura gradually shifted to an authoritative one. The exhaustion that was initially there on her divine face could no longer be found as she sauntered towards the desk. Humph, instead of going through the important books I gave you, I didn't expect you to be sitting around and wasting time. She reprimanded angrily. And why is the student sitting on the teacher's seat? Shoo, get away. Yun Yao, without warning, encased Zhao Wei's arm with her soft hand. A look of surprise formed on her face as she got a feel of the purely defined strong muscles beneath the soft fabric. Her surprise intensified further when she tried to gently pull him away from the seat. Well, she couldn't. Zhao Wei's body was like an immovable ancient tree that was deeply rooted in the core of the universe. Overly stable and unshakable. What sort of physical strength is this? Is he some high-level demonic beast in disguise? Yun Yao exclaimed in her mind. She hadn't used her full cultivation strength, but even if it was little, it was just enough to send anyone of the first sky flying to the heavens. Even though her battle strength wasn't on the same level as those who mainly pursued martial Dao as their crucial path, she was still a bona fide peak 6th sky ascended realm expert. And the gap between her and those of the first sky was like an uncrossable chasm, impossible to bridge. The curiosity of a woman can't be quelled easily, and she, Yun Yao, entered a silent war with Zhao Wei's arm, much to the latter's amusement and intrigue. Seeing her struggle to pull him away from the seat, Zhao Wei couldn't help but find Pill Master Yun Yao to be so small and cute. Well, there was nothing small about her two distracting peaks and her valley of a yet-to-be unraveled bliss. They are humongous or... Zhao Wei did an internal nod whilst enjoying the view. What's wrong, teacher? Am I too heavy for you? Zhao Wei suddenly spoke before rising from the seat, an action that caught Yun Yao by surprise that she nearly fell onto his body. Zhao Wei was quick enough to support her voluptuous body by holding her delicate shoulder in place, or things might have derailed into a very terrifying situation. He was an extremely virile man after all. The two looked at each other before Yun Yao's face flushed in embarrassment. She wished there was a hole around to hide her face. Zhao Wei moved aside, away from her path, and comically gestured his hands to the now empty seat. Ugh! Yun Yao groaned in frustration before dropping on the seat. She then leaned her back on the comfy seat without caring for her image. Zhao Wei was just too good. He had already gotten an edge over her in several situations, but she was prepared to snuff out his ingrained arrogance and smugness. Find another seat and continue reading those books instead of standing there like a clueless idiot, Zhao Wei. Yun Yao pointed her finger at the 4 neatly arranged books in front of her. Idiot? Wow, that hurts. But I don't think I need those anymore. Consider the little assignment as done. Now can't we just go straight to the main course? Zhao Wei's initial playfulness was no longer there as he walked along the desk, his tall finger trailing its edges. What do you mean that you don't need them anymore? Yun Yao asked in confusion. Zhao Wei didn't answer immediately as he subtly changed the subject. Reality is often disappointing. In essence, the book 10,000 Plant Illustrations may take an average aspiring alchemist about 10 years to fully unravel all of its content. Zhao Wei put his hands behind his back. A normal genius may take maybe around 3 to 5 years, give or take. Rote memorization cannot help at all in understanding the book except if you have deeper comprehension. Yun Yao was speechless as she listened to each word coming off Zhao Wei's lips. She wondered where he might be leading the conversation. Let me guess, you are a genius yourself, right, Miss Yun? Zhao Wei smiled at her. That panty-wetting smile was something that she really wanted to ignore. I guess. Yun Yao answered, wondering why he asked such an obvious question. I have always been a genius, dummy. She thought with pride. You took around 3 to 4 years to complete the 10,000 plant illustrations, if I may take a guess. Zhao Wei spouted random bullshit. If he wasn't embodying some random reincarnated big shot that knows all types of phenomena, immortal diseases, and physique, then what could it be? Yun Yao narrowed her eyes in uncertainty. How did you know? Did old man Guan tell you? Zhao Wei arched his brows in surprise. I was just taking guesses if you remember. And I had just met old man Guan today. The possibility of him telling me anything about you is almost zero. Not like it matters. Yun Yao sighed before giving the brazen young man a no-nonsense expression. Spit everything that you want to say. She demanded like a tyrannical queen. Okay. I have already comprehended the knowledge inside those books. I think it's high time that we jump into the practical side of things. Zhao Wei raised his hands in fake defeat as he dropped a bombshell. What? That's impossible. Yun Yao almost sprung up from her seat, partly in disbelief and anger. How she wanted to beat the living daylights out of him for bullshitting around her. But seeing the serious and cold expression he was showing, Yun Yao had the vague feeling that the young fellow was speaking the truth. Somehow, she found it quite weird that Zhao Wei could transition between expressions so fast like a chameleon. It was almost unnatural. Say, I believe you. Then my next course of action would be asking you the questions. Wait. Yun Yao stopped whatever she wanted to say and clicked her tongue in dissatisfaction as if she had suddenly realized something. Why do I feel as if you are leading me by the nose? She tilted her head to the side with a smileless smile on her sexy face. You think too much, Miss Yun Yao. Just test me and you will get the answers that you wish for. Zhao Wei grinned while averting her concern. She really is sharp. The wow effect has somehow lost its initial impact. He thought nonchalantly. Tisk. Okay. I am prepared to see you make a fool out of yourself, anyway. Yun Yao gave in as she took the massive book 10,000 plant illustration into her hands. She then opened a random page. Tell me all the details about the clear soul crystal grass. All the minute details. Yun Yao put emphasis on her last words. Zhao Wei didn't flatter and went straight into answering. The clear soul crystal grass is a rare medicinal herb of the yin attribute and it normally grows in places with strong yin energy, death energy, or full of discarnate souls. It requires an average temperature of 3 degrees Celsius to 7 degrees Celsius. Zhao Wei proceeded to enumerate all its ecological requirements, up to very minuscule details that could easily be ignored as unnecessary. It is a vital ingredient during the concoction of the heart-stabilizing pill which helps in preventing heart demons and clearing the mind of any lethal distractions during major breakthroughs. There is also the clear soul pill which helps in nourishing the soul but it's only effective for those below the true spirit realm. Zhao Wei showed knowledge without hindrance, without impediments, effortlessly flowing out like a waterfall. Yun Yao continued to ask a plethora of questions that she forgot herself, lost in Zhao Wei's expanding domain of knowledge and wisdom. He was just like an all-rounded scholar, answering everything she threw at him without pause. Was she a genius? Yes, she considered herself as such and it wasn't all self-proclaimed. She was legit. No, she was regarded as such by many due to her alchemical contributions. Additionally, she was one of the youngest master alchemists, if not the youngest. The young man before him was simply beyond a genius. How could she not refer to him as such when he was explaining some things that were even beyond the scope of knowledge of someone new to the world of alchemy? Crossbreed or hybridization of different medicinal herbs? Hypothetical compatibility ratios? No, she had to stop him. Stop! Yun Yao shouted or her eardrums might be overwhelmed by the influx of knowledge. Zhao Wei listened to her plea. Many thoughts ran through Yun Yao's mind as she began to incessantly tap her finger against the wooden surface of the desk. He was certainly very precious with immense potential but she wondered if his skills were going to be as good as his knowledge. Old man Guan had given her around 4 days to give Zhao Wei a basic outline of the Dao of Alchemy and show him that it was as arduous as martial Dao was, if not more. Currently, she was considering if Zhao Wei could be stolen. No, that came off rather straightforward. She wanted to see the full potential of Zhao Wei in the Dao of Alchemy. She wanted to be a part of that journey. She had a feeling that he was going to be an indispensable assistant during her pill concoction sessions. If Zhao Wei was as insightful as she gave him credit for, then wouldn't it be possible for her to use him to deduce those incomplete recipes lying around in her room? As much as she admired and valued Zhao Wei, he was still old man Guan's disciple but she was determined to know more about him during those 4 days. Zhao Wei might just be the catalyst she needed for her own improvement in the Dao of alchemy. It sounded silly, but Yun Yao trusted her instincts. Knowledge and wisdom favored neither age nor status. Knowledge didn't discriminate, and her Dao of alchemy mattered more than most. Leaving her seat, Yun Yao gracefully walked toward Zhao Wei and stood before him. She didn't realize it, but she was closer to him than she intended to. Zhao Wei could smell her flowery scent. A scent that could very well be the essence of seduction. Zhao Wei wondered if she had those legendary hidden physiques like the bewitching physique, yin cauldron physique, or nine-tailed fox bloodline. Author's note: random physiques that he had read from his past world's cultivation novels. I think I should really show you what true alchemy is. Yun Yao finally declared in a confident, alluring voice as she smiled at him, her small fair hand outstretched. Her hazel green eyes burned with the fiery embers of determination and visions of a bright future. Zhao Wei smiled back and gently enclosed her hand in a slow, almost intimate handshake. I will be in your care. Her breath hitched in her throat. Why did it feel as if she were shaking hands with the devil himself? Chapter 118, Poison Master? Maybe poison ivy would be better. WC 1.6k. By the way, I have been curious about your reason for giving me the comprehensive guide to the art of poisons, Poison Sutra. You don't look like the type to dabble in the poison arts. Zhao Wei nonchalantly commented, and as he tried to disengage from the handshake, he felt some resistance from Yun Yao's soft hand. Zhao Wei looked at the dazed female alchemist before abruptly leaning his face. He was so painfully close to her beautiful face that the tips of their noses were nearly touching. Miss Yun, aren't you being a little bit clingy at our first contact? His deep voice and masculine scent in such proximity made her heartbeat increase at a fast rate. Yun Yao quickly realized that she was still tightly holding onto Zhao Wei's big hand like a child that doesn't want to be left alone when they met their favorite person. Please forgive my bad manners, I unwittingly forgot that I was still holding onto your hand. My mind has been all over the place lately. Oh deities above, am I slowly losing my brilliance? Yun Yao mumbled almost incoherently as she jumped backward, away from Zhao Wei as if he were a plague. That abrupt action made her two immaculate peaks shake and jiggle, leaving much to a man's erotic imagination. Her cheeks were flushed red in embarrassment and shyness that was so out of sync with her character. Currently, she just looked like the pure-hearted maiden she thought she wasn't. She hated it. She didn't like the fact that ever since she had met him, her mind hadn't been able to think rationally, and it had even led her to be unable to fully concentrate during the previous 1 hour of pill concoction. Her prior exhaustion had been a result of messing at the last step of pill congealment due to a lack of absolute focus. I should make a rule for my own sake. Any form of physical contact between us should be prohibited. Yun Yao arrived at a conclusion to prevent her inner demoness from misbehaving. She could control her desires well, but she was at the age where her sexual drive was at its peak. Men desired her, but they were just not worthy, as her love and passion were only reserved for the Dao of alchemy. Was it fate or coincidence that Zhao Wei just had to be that special of a man capable of evoking and unearthing her controlled sexual drive? Yun Yao called that bullshit. As charming as Zhao Wei was, what she was interested in the most was his unordinary perspective towards alchemical concepts. She reminded herself there was nothing else. Yun Yao had her own pride and face to keep after all. Let's go to the pill refinement chamber. Yun Yao quickly spoke, her face didn't show any ripples. She was as serene as the gentle waters of a still lake. Zhao Wei noticed the change and nodded internally. It is good that she has managed to calm herself. Things might have gotten troublesome otherwise. He already knew about the requirements for a successful pill concoction. One of them was a calm state of mind, a mind that was free of any form of mental disturbances. An alchemist must be in their best mental state, and this can be achieved through diligent meditation. Many factors had to be considered to successfully create a pill worth consuming instead of useless trash with unresolved toxins. Deep within him, Zhao Wei understood Yun Yao was tempting and extremely attractive as a woman. Damn, it would be a lie to say he wasn't tempted, as he was but a mere man. Zhao Wei just wanted to overly complicate this seemingly short-term relationship between them. They were all adults with a common goal of benefiting from each other's knowledge. There was silence between the two as Yun Yao led Zhao Wei past several doors in the eastern hallway. Yun Yao finally stopped at the furthest door before she opened it wide enough for Zhao Wei to enter and then closed it behind her. The pill refinement chamber was more spacious than the study room to facilitate a smooth airflow. On further inspection, there was even a well-integrated ventilation system throughout the chamber due to the existence of air vents and modified windows. Zhao Wei then turned his attention to a medium-sized purple cauldron at the center of the room. It was beautifully crafted with intricate drawings of purple lotuses etched on its smooth surface. It emitted a certain sense of spirituality which Zhao Wei instinctually analyzed that it was due to its unique status as a spiritual class tool. As for which tier it was, Zhao Wei didn't know. It was his first time seeing such a rare tool considering they were treated as treasures in the Cloud Country. That's Serenity Purple. She's my one and only. Yun Yao caught a glimpse of Zhao Wei's curiosity toward her alchemy cauldron and decided to courteously introduce it. She's a mid-tier spiritual tool. I got her as a gift from my late master before she passed away peacefully. Even though she was speaking about a loss, Yun Yao didn't show any sadness in her eyes or voice. Zhao Wei didn't offer any insincere condolences either and chose to remain silent. It was better to listen to her chatter away about things she was passionate about. She guarantees an additional 10% success rate during the process of pill concoction. She's also resistant to internal pill explosions in case of an error made during pill concoction. With every little detail she exposed, Zhao Wei would silently nod, sometimes humming an affirmation. After a few minutes, Yun Yao realized that she had talked more than she had planned. I am sorry about that, Zhao Wei. There is this bond. Yun Yao tried to awkwardly explain herself. It's fine. I understand what you are trying to say, Miss Yun. Zhao Wei cut her off with an understanding smile. I feel grateful that you understand. Let me meditate for a moment before I perform any alchemy, okay? Yun Yao said with mirth in her eyes as she sat on the futon near Serenity Purple. Gently closing her eyes, she immediately began to meditate, cutting off everything from her senses. She hasn't yet answered my question about that poison sutra. Her attention span is surely something. Zhao Wei thought, deciding not to disturb her. He then looked around and spotted a spare purple-colored futon. She likes purple it seems, or I just might be reading wrong into the information. Zhao Wei casually analyzed as he took a seat. I should also meditate. With his inner sight, Zhao Wei noticed that about 85% of the inner strength inside his Danshan was already converted into true force. Zhao Wei was honestly surprised by the speed. He thought it was going to take him at most 2 to 3 days for a full conversion, but estimations couldn't keep up with the peculiarities of the myriad constellation physique. There also seemed to be some subtle differences between the true force being produced by his body and Danshan. For example, the true force from his physique was more tyrannical than his Danshan's, which was peaceful. The similarities they shared were in their ultra-high quality, quantity, and density. Zhao Wei then observed the seeds of the elemental essences embedded in the illusory clipote. He found no changes whatsoever as for those elemental essences to experience both qualitative and evolutionary changes. Time and luck were going to play very important roles. 2 hours later, Zhao Wei opened his eyes as he felt a certain gaze directed towards him. You look like a saint when meditating, but I won't be fooled even for a minute. Her voice was soft and gentle as she pouted her lips at Zhao Wei. When and where did I claim that I was a saint? Hey! Zhao Wei said indifferently. In your dreams, Yun Yao randomly replied with a blank expression before standing up. Zhao Wei cringed internally at the reply, but his eyes never left her figure as she began to sort out the simple medicinal herbs that she needed on the table. They were carefully stored in transparent jade containers so that they wouldn't deteriorate in quality. After sorting through everything, Yun Yao walked towards the cauldron with the herbs. She's thorough. Each herb has been weighed in respect to their required portions. Zhao Wei noted as his eyes had never left her. You are going to concoct the blood cleansing pill. Zhao Wei spoke in a matter-of-fact voice. Yun Yao didn't show any surprise on her face as she slightly nodded. For someone who can fully comprehend the whole 10,000 plant illustration and beginner's guide for pill making, it seems no herbs or pills can easily escape your recognition. She then suddenly touched her chin with a thoughtful look as if she had remembered something. I remember you asking me the reason why I gave you the poison sutra back in the study room. She spoke with a weird gleam in her beautiful hazel green eyes. Oh, you remembered. Zhao Wei leaned his cheek on his fisted hand. I am a poison master. Yun Yao cluelessly tapped her smooth chin as she dropped a shocking revelation. Zhao Wei had his mouth hanging wide open like a certain Pokemon. He was undoubtedly rendered speechless. And how could Yun Yao not be satisfied by the reaction she elicited from him? Chapter 119, Did you watch Barney the Dinosaur? Word count 1818. What? Do I look unqualified, or are you thinking along the lines that a woman can't be a poison master? Yun Yao cocked her head with an elegant smile on her cherry lips. She was clearly enjoying the moment. Ever since she had met the young man, she had thought that apart from his top-notch looks, there had been something enticing and otherworldly about him. Even though he didn't make any effort to hide, Yun Yao had perceived the subtle indifference hidden behind his beautiful silvery grey eyes, which were accentuated with attractive dark eyelashes. He looked like the type to be unresponsive towards his surroundings, as if everything was stale and uninspiring before his gaze. Seeing him genuinely surprised by the notion of her secret profession made her feel somehow weirdly accomplished. "Who said anything about you being unqualified as a woman?" Zhao Wei grinned while shaking his head in disbelief. Did she think he was someone with a stringent patriarchal outlook on certain matters? She may have misunderstood the reason behind my loop of surprise, Zhao Wei thought. The reason why I am surprised is because those who dabble in the arts of poison are very rare, as it is treated by many as an unorthodox path. Zhao Wei clarified, and it seemed as if he had a lot to say but restrained himself. He just wanted Yun Yao to show him the ropes of the way of alchemy as soon as possible. He could have opted to pursue the individual practice of pill refinement by himself, but Zhao Wei understood that pride sometimes had to be put down. The guidance and teaching of an expert, an already established master in the world of alchemy, was highly indispensable and a shortcut to skip through the unnecessary beginner mistakes. Of course, his efforts, hard work, and seemingly good affinity with the craft were going to determine his future progression. Yun Yao hummed softly before squarely looking at Zhao Wei as if she had met a kindred spirit. She realized that Zhao Wei had more to say and was only acting on self-preservation. Pursed lips, eyes that would momentarily dart to her serenity purple, and the herbs placed before her, even though he tried to hide it, Yun Yao was intelligent enough to read his body language. "You have more to say, right?" Yun Yao urged with a knowing, soul-stirring smile. She simply couldn't leave him when the topic of interest was all about poison. She felt that Zhao Wei might be harboring a totally different school of thought. Seeing her shimmering, almost crazed eyes, Zhao Wei slightly furrowed his brows. He knew if he insisted on keeping his opinion at bay, then this pushy woman wasn't going to stop soon. "Okay, it's just some generic perspective towards cultivation in general." Zhao Wei gave in to her inquisitive yet curious hazel green eyes. Yun Yao had a victorious grin, full of smugness. She had won in making Zhao Wei talk about his standpoint on the matter. Zhao Wei wondered if the Aphrodite of a woman treated everything as a competition. Disengaging his clenched hand from his cheek, Zhao Wei leaned back and assumed a straight, confident posture. "What is orthodox? What is unorthodox? What is righteous? What is demonic? Who stipulated that all paths should be categorized under these loose concepts of morality?" He began, his charismatic voice, impactful, full of vehemence and indifference. Zhao Wei radiated an air of wildness and abandon like a reckless youth who wasn't constrained by that generalized thought process. Yun Yao was captivated, infected by his manly confidence and his unfetteredness. It even affected her breathing rate as she struggled to contain herself due to the joy bubbling inside her heart. She understood Zhao Wei as she had once had the same thoughts back in the days when she had bravely pursued triple paths, too admired by many while one was shunned as devilry. It was during her youth, when she had been around 25 years of age, that she had introduced herself to the rarely charted Dao of poisons. Her late master had once squabbled with her when she had learned about her eventual interest in the so-called unorthodox path. But who was she? She was Yun Yao, someone hard-headed, strong-willed, determined, and like the clouds. As much as the clouds might get dispersed by the turbulent cold winds, their indelible mark on the vaults of the heavens would never get erased. "You know what? I didn't expect you to be deep, but that subtle wildness around you is something that I was never wrong about." Yun Yao wildly laughed. Her laughter was like that of a carefree child, pure, worryless, and orgasmic to the ears. She seemed unburdened by worldly matters and radiated pure happiness. Zhao Wei watched her free-spiritedness at that moment, reveling in that picturesque scene. He decided to save that moment, that image, somewhere in his mind, so that when he was free, he would partake in trying to capture the essence of her ethereal beauty inside a painting. Even though he still hadn't actively begun to invest in the path of painting and artistry, Zhao Wei made that memory among his task lists. "Do you want to know the reason behind my interest in Dao of poison?" Yun Yao vaguely smiled as she turned her attention to the purple-colored cauldron in front of her. She then swiftly performed a series of mysterious hand seals that levitated the medicinal herbs above the opened lid of the Serenity Purple. Multitasking? Zhao Wei observed her set of actions carefully. "Do you think there's a difference between the Dao of poison and the Dao of alchemy?" Yun Yao nonchalantly asked as she used one of her hands to revive the flames of the special fire-attributed combustibles below the cauldron. She then used her hand to extract the medicinal essences from each herb. Her usage of the true force was certainly calculated and kept at a minimum. She seemed to be an advocate of efficiency over quantity. In a matter of seconds, several medicinal essences could be seen floating in the air before Yun Yao effortlessly guided them into the cauldron to undergo refinement. Zhao Wei didn't answer her question, fearing that he might distract her beautiful fluid actions. You needn't worry about me. I can make these types of pills even while my eyes are closed. Yun Yao smirked. She could already guess what Zhao Wei was thinking. Nothing short of impressive. All right then, I won't be considerate anymore. Zhao Wei spoke in slight admiration as he mulled over Yun Yao's question. Yun Yao continued whatever she was doing, but a small prideful smile lingered on her divine face. It was refreshing. I think, the Dao of alchemy and the Dao of poison are of the same essence. Poison can originate from both plants or special beasts, and this applies to alchemy. Zhao Wei explained after a short moment of drawing inspiration from the esoteric book. They both dance on the precipice of life and death, creation and destruction. Pa! Yun Yao gently slapped the sides of the cauldron, an action that caused the lid to topple off, and what followed was a fresh, rich medicinal aroma of pills. Almost immediately, 6 blood-red pills flew from the cauldron and settled in Yun Yao's small fair hand. Under the light of the room, the 6 blood-red pills exuded a red sheen from their smooth surfaces. These were surely of the highest quality. Zhao Wei, who had watched every little ministration done by Yun Yao, couldn't help but feel excited about beginning his own practice almost immediately. Your answer is good. Pills can kill. If by an unlucky chance or cruel fate, I was ever born sinister, then killing a huge population will be just as easy as stepping on an ant. Yun Yao casually stored the fresh steaming pills in a jade bottle, her actions and eerie tone making her terrifying and seemingly insidious like a. Zhao Wei loudly gulped. You had once taken different mixtures of poison, right? Yun Yao then turned her head towards Zhao Wei, giving him a kind smile. Her current smile was anything but kind, and Zhao Wei was extremely shocked by her powerful intuition, or was it something else? How did you know? Zhao Wei neither denied nor accepted her claim. I have a special gift. I am. Yun Yao answered before stopping midway. A poison master. She shamelessly continued. Zhao Wei rolled his eyes and almost clicked his tongue. I didn't know you liked making jokes. He blandly stated. Yun Yao smiled vibrantly before her expression turned serious. The shift in expression was so sudden that it slightly alarmed Zhao Wei. You know you could have died when you did what you did. I am extremely surprised that you are even alive and still breathing. She currently had the demeanor of a strict but caring mother as she openly admonished Zhao Wei's past dangerous actions. Were you trying to build up a stupid poison resistance, or were you trying to suicide? Zhao Wei remained silent as Yun Yao continued to vent about his carelessness and inexperienced bum. Why do you care about my past actions? Didn't I live to tell the tale? Why do you care about me when we barely know each other? If there was one thing that Zhao Wei was still trying to decipher thoroughly, then it would be women. They were always full of surprises, both predictable and unpredictable at the same time. A few minutes later, Yun Yao exhaled silently before looking at Zhao Wei. Her cheeks were flushed in embarrassment after recalling she had acted and talked like she deeply cared about Zhao Wei. Why are you still sitting there? Get your *SS over here. Yun Yao didn't care about her language. She wanted to mask that weird feeling within her. You have pills to make. And it starts at this very moment. Zhao Wei grinned like a fox, which further intensified her shyness. Is purple your favorite color? You seem to like it very much. Did you watch Barney the dinosaur when you were a kid, Miss Yun? Zhao Wei eased her situation by asking random questions. Who is Barney the dinosaur? In the following days, the two followed a repetitive routine of practicing alchemy, secluded cultivation, meditation, and having deep discussions about the Dao of alchemy and poison. Yun Yao had never felt more alive. As for Zhao Wei, there was one thing that he had been anticipating. Even as his skills in the creation of pills became better and better each day, he had finally reached the much-needed equilibrium in terms of true force, and was about to evolve. What are the changes and boons that it was going to bring with it? Chapter 120, Yun Yao's Dao of Alchemy, Aspiring Alchemy Goddess, First Cycle of Evolution commences. As the orange sun gradually dipped below the horizon, casting its ghastly shadows over the limitless mountainous landscape, the air grew cold and the first snowflake pirouetted from the heavens, followed by a code-like matrical downfall of countless others. From a musical point of view, their frosty dance was similar to a celestial waltz, as they reminded the denizens of the cloud country that winter was there to stay and the eventful year was about to end, ushering in another cycle to the ever-flowing time. A beautiful woman clad in a long black dress that perfectly encapsulated her divine figure, stood absent-mindedly at the center of the snow-laden courtyard as she gazed in another direction, more specifically, a reclusive chamber some large distances from where she was. The merry snowflakes that fell on her beautiful, long dark red hair thought they were on for a free ride only for them to miraculously evaporate into vapor. The woman's sinfully voluptuous body was like a hot medicinal furnace capable of melting away the coldness of the winter. Her narrow eyebrows were furrowed as she showed complicated feelings on her face. She seemed to be having conflicting thoughts about something, yet she was too unsure of herself. Yun Yao exhaled lightly, her breath forming a gentle mist in the cold air. I didn't expect it to snow without warning, as the weather has been quite irregular over the years. Sometimes there is even a snowless winter. She then funnily gazed at the bridge of her nose as a lone snowflake momentarily landed on her glowing satin skin. She giggled at the sheer absurdity of the scene before removing the Lone Ranger. I hate winter, she said with indifference which contrasted with her forlorn expression. I wonder when that guy will finish his cultivation. It has been 2 days already, ever since our teacher-student duration of 4 days ended. Old man Guan seemed to have been delayed somewhere or is busy. I am once again reminded that he's an exaggerated genius in both alchemy and the martial Dao. What did he do in his previous life to get fate to favor him so much? The snow had already accumulated to ankle level within that short duration, but Yun Yao's soft and tender body was impervious to the frostbite. I just can't resist feeling slightly jealous and proud for guiding such an existence. Yun Yao gently crouched down and randomly began to draw stick figures on the snow-covered ground. One stick figure resembled a male figure and another, a female. Between the two artistic creations was a roughly drawn cauldron that seemed to create an invisible bond between them. The two stick man figures now seem inseparable. As bad as the drawn picture was, it still evoked the feeling of emotional chemistry and reminded one of a neutralization reaction. Like the yin and yang of the acid-base reactions. What mattered wasn't her below-average drawing but the ethereality of the essence captured from within, her inner feelings of attraction and all that emotional luggage. But she understood. She knew. Her intuitions told her so. The man was a mixture of perfection and imperfections. He had ambitions and dreams that exceeded her own world of imagination, but that only made her feel invested to unravel him. To peel him and understand him layer by layer like a fresh onion. But he's quite resistant to my all-powerful charm that can lead to the fall of innumerable kingdoms, hee. Yun Yao laughed to herself, finding it interesting that Zhao Wei practiced the elusive Dao of self-restraint and anti-horniness. Those two terms were something that he would normally mumble when she unintentionally exposed the divine ravine of limitless imagination. And it had only been through consistent pleadings, that Zhao Wei shared his deep understanding of those two rarely trodden paths to her. Yun Yao remembered how she had laughed like never before when he had explained such bizarre concepts. Just what couldn't she find attractive in that man? Sighing deeply to herself after feeling that she had spent the short break that she needed, Yun Yao stopped playing with the snow before giving the lone house one last look. After that, she didn't forget to ruin the drawings with her feet before using her true force to sweep the snow away. She was just being extra careful lest she suffer from an embarrassment of the century if Zhao Wei discovered her trash-level chaotic drawings. With how brilliant his mind was, he was probably going to know what those two stickman figures represented. I better revise those ancient pill recipes since my break time is already over. Since he dreams big, shouldn't I also dream of being the alchemy goddess? Yun Yao smiled as she elegantly walked away, her footprints on the snow-covered ground barely traceable. As unrealistic as it is, with hope, talent, luck, and hard work, Yun Yao, can achieve anything when it comes to the Dao of alchemy. Yun Yao chuckled to herself, her hazel green eyes like a green lotus pond rippling with waves of ambition. She was going to do it. She was determined. It was her own Dao of alchemy. Her perseverance. Her dedication to the craft. Her inborn reverence to all that was alchemy. Unknown to Yun Yao, the affirmations of that day, refined and redefined her, actualized the mysterious of her Dao of alchemy, and formed an unseen bridge that would soon lead her to remarkable heights. Only time will tell if her history with Zhao Wei was going to be a continuous one or a shattered one, meant to be forgotten in the... Anyway, who was sure that they knew anything about the future? Yet again, the indiscernible flutter of the wings of the butterfly goddess and the ominous rotations of the cogwheels of fate interlaced together to create a beautiful symphony of anew. Inside the cultivation chamber, Zhao Wei sat in a lotus position as he awaited the inevitable. His senses were cut off from the snow-laden domain outside, his main concentration directed towards the impending evolution of the He began to mentally list the perks gotten from the base form of the plus. Finally, a mode where I perceive events around me in slow motion due to high-speed mental calculations. This is good. I think the business plan of building in the future will be a good venture. Zhao Wei thought with a smile, and it was then that the same satisfied smile on his lips froze like the ice age. The first cycle of evolution of the commences. Those were the last lines of encrypted texts he saw before he went blind. Subtly fractured to accommodate the arrival of a stupendous, evolved. The first cycle was the beginning of a new beginning. Chapter 121, Eyes that can peer through the very fabric of reality. Awakening. When thinking about the universe, what exactly comes to mind? Is it the swirling masses of kaleidoscopic galaxies, or maybe nebulas? Is it the mysterious black hole capable of devouring all states of matter without restraint? Is it the beautiful glitters of the star constellations in the vast skies? Just not to be mistaken, this isn't all about the wisdom path venerable. Quasars, entropy, creation and destruction of stars, antimatter. There are just many things that come to mind when talking about a broad subject like the universe. All that aside, what is exactly the? What is? The universe encompassed the whole of existence, from the smallest subatomic particles to the cosmic galactic wonders and its uncountable celestial bodies. It was infinite and always in a state of unperceived constant expansion. Reality was more sophisticated, more complex, as the universe was just its physical manifestation. It encompassed what lay within the universe and beyond, from the emotional spectrum, the intangible space and time, macrocosms, and our own insignificant existences. Reality and the universe can practically be referred to as information. They are part of the information that we, humans, can read about and memorize, but still can't fully comprehend its entirety due to existing physical and mental limitations. The very is a piece of information that we can't have access to. How can we understand something beyond the domain of human cognition? How can we understand the information encoded in reality? There was only one answer. This was simply seizing an infinitesimal part of the without even understanding it at the grand level. And the individual, Zhao Wei, had unintentionally done just that. Evolution. Zhao Wei's was going through a cycle of evolution. Even though his consciousness was being submerged by an, he could still feel the indescribable pain, as if his soul and mind were being minced and rewritten into something much more grander and splendorous. Zhao Wei wasn't growing stronger, he felt like he was being tortured. Even when he was half-conscious, he instinctively tugged at the hairs on his temple in a hopeless attempt to mitigate the unimaginable pain. His white teeth incessantly cluttered against each other like those of a resident of the mental asylum, his jaws clenching and unclenching in odd fashion. His actions proved futile, and his pain seemed to even increase, as if to mock him. If that wasn't enough, Zhao Wei unconsciously went for his eyes. This pair of eyes was the source of his nightmarish pain. They were putting him through an infinite cycle of suffering. He thought he understood pain and embraced it, but he had solely been mistaken. He was wrong. His pain resistance was simply laughable, and his steely will could also bend. Zhao Wei decided to do the unthinkable to, at least, alleviate the suffering. He was in his most vulnerable state, where all irrationalities would run amok inside his breaking mind. Cha! In a fit of desperation and illimitable anguish, Zhao Wei violently tore his two eyeballs from their sockets in one swift movement. Rivulets of blood, brimming with vigor and vitality, silently dripped down his cheeks in irregular streams. His mouth opened and closed in succession. The mighty scream that was supposed to ensue did not occur. It was soundless. He couldn't scream, as if he had already screamed all his life and his voice, forever lost. He couldn't cry. He couldn't do anything except experience this hellish abyss of self-torture. Zhao Wei finally gained consciousness after gorging his eyes out, but even that didn't help. He was previously in a world of, but now, he was in a world of radiance. The situation was ironic, as his eyes were no longer present, leaving only hollowed sockets dripping with red blood and tissues. Zhao Wei could now see everything. Literally everything. The sudden influx of information nearly made his already breaking soul and mind cross the final hurdle and shatter completely. As more and more information about his surroundings made its way into his slowly stabilizing mind, the pain also lessened. Zhao Wei didn't understand what was happening, as the strings of information inside his mind were extremely chaotic and jumbled up. It was simply a mess with no order and coherence. Why can I see without my eyes? And why are my initial vision-related abilities more powerful? It's as if these meaty eyeballs have been inconsequential. The eyeless Zhao Wei spoke in wonder as he gazed down at the two bloodied eyeballs in both of his hands. When Zhao Wei tightly clenched his hands around those eyeballs and decisively popped them into a paste, he didn't feel any regrets. Anyway, it was then that his body's unnatural regenerative power kicked in and his eyes gradually began to regrow. Zhao Wei furrowed his brows together and the current him looked quite horrifying, like a being straight out of a horror film, or canonically like a Lucas. It's a strange feeling being able to subconsciously feel my tissues regrowing and mending together. Zhao Wei mused. Zhao Wei had been seated in a lotus position throughout the whole process, even now when his eyeballs were about to be completely healed. Finally, Zhao Wei could be seen with his regenerated eyes currently shut closed. Zhao Wei tried to open them, but they felt surprisingly heavy, as if an irresistible force was preventing him from opening something that shouldn't be opened. It was as if the simple action of him opening his eyes was a taboo, something that went against the interest of the principles of heaven and reality itself. Zhao Wei didn't panic, finding the situation interesting. It was a test for him to surmount the insurmountable. Did he have the guts and will to defy the heavens and reality imposed on him? Did he have it in him to pry open the eyes that went against they? If it was a test, then Zhao Wei couldn't be more incensed to demolish it. When have I been afraid of tests? Bring it on! He amped his confidence and determination. His eyes were going to open no matter what. Zhao Wei struggled, and the struggle between him and the eye muscles escalated to a war of attrition that took several hours. It was a mentally demanding task, but he didn't falter. Eventually, the resistance began to dwindle and Zhao Wei strenuously urged one of his eyelids to open. Am I trying to open an eye or MJL near? Zhao Wei wondered incredulously. And then it happened. Zhao Wei managed to open the stubborn eyelid, and what was seen beneath was a deep silver that seemed to encompass all the colors of the universe. In front of his deep silver eye, all kaleidoscopic colors lost meaning, and the very fabric of reality itself became like an open book for him to read, comprehend, and decode into analyzable information. Now the finisher. Zhao Wei pursed his lips, a serious expression settling on his transcendent face. He forced the other eye to open. Do. A terrifying pulse reverberated all over the room when both of his eyes were fully opened. And then, an invisible ripple emanated from them, spreading throughout the whole universe like wildfire in a forest. For a moment, the temporal forces of the universe stopped. Space froze. The symphony of destiny playing in the background paused. And an unknown message was forcibly sent into the fabric of the universe. All divine entities, from the terrifying beasts of chaos and eventually, every living existence in the fan universe, understood one thing. A dreadful, taboo existence had woken up. And with his awakening, came irrevocable changes that were soon going to capsize the established laws of the world. A new era was nigh. Only the truly divine and the truly powerful God Kings, gods, and ancient possessors of the 8 great God eyes understood better than anyone. Chapter 122, Truth Discernment, Information Perception. The life-sacred land was extremely huge, its sheer size 10,000 times bigger than the Azure continent. At the center of the life-sacred land, was an whose towering height seemed to connect the highest heavens and the mortal world. From another perspective, they appeared to be supporting the whole weight of the heavens from crumbling down to earth. Its humongous branches stretched widely in unison, bearing within them verdant green leaves and multicolored fruits oozing extremely potent life energy. Its forest green thick and sturdy bark radiated the allure of ultra-high quality material for both artifact refinement and alchemy. At the base of the gigantic tree, complex roots that gave off the feeling of being alive spread out like labyrinthine tendrils, digging far deeper into the recesses of the earth. If only there was the existence of they, then the would have been akin to a miniaturized. At the uppermost branch of the ancient tree of life was a majestic palace of crystal in green that seemed like the heart of the life-sacred land. Well, the subtle fluctuations of a remnant power beyond pulsating around it bore witness to a greater being residing there. A 9th god eye, or maybe something more. That ripple bears no resemblance to anything I have ever felt before. It gives me the feeling that it's above everything. A heavenly voice that seemed to be in sync with everything in nature lightly echoed inside the palatial confines. The bearer of such a magnificent voice was a beautiful woman sitting on an immaculate, verdant green throne weaved out of the ancient tree of life. She wore light green imperial robes that suggestively hugged her slender but mouth-watering curves. She had tall slender legs, bereft of any sort of imperfection, peeking out of her flowing robes. Her pearly skin was soft and tender, her slender nose gracefully sculpted with detailed precision. Just like her natural green wavy tumbles of waist-length hair, her powerful eyes reminded one of a beautiful spring and unforgettable intimacy. This woman with a regal, transcendent poise was the life goddess, the one and only possessor of the life god eye. If Zhao Wei had been here, he could have easily put two and two together while sighing about how the heavens like to bless the jade beauties with such looks. All lives within the cosmos are interconnected via the supreme laws of life, but it's a pity. The life goddess sighed indifferently. Just how many times had she been frustrated to the point of being indifferent? Even though I have perfected the life laws, I don't think I can easily pinpoint the origin of the ripple whose very essence seems to disrupt the intricate mechanisms behind reality. Her insightful gaze extended far beyond the crystalline palace, spanning the vast reaches of the life-sacred land and beyond. The life goddess understood that her control over the supreme laws of life originated from the god-eye bloodline coursing through her veins. It was her birthright, as if fate had decreed so ever since she came into existence. But with such a decree from fate, naturally came invisible limitations that made her unable to cross some certain boundaries unless it's impossible. I can deduce everyone within the life-sacred land, and that seems to be my current limit. Maybe the destiny goddess can calculate fate and trace the origin of this mysterious person, she spoke to herself, her voice still full of doubt. She didn't fully believe that the ever-so-mysterious destiny goddess could easily control everything. Anyway, the destiny goddess would always make her uncomfortable. Gently combing her soft hair behind her elf-like ear, a rare smile graced her face. It was a smile that seemed to radiate life into everything in existence. Even a person on the verge of death would surely revive after witnessing it. Why do I feel like I will be meeting that person quite soon? A woman's intuition could sometimes really affect reality. Beyond the life-sacred land, within the Yangling zone, in the hidden subspaces of the ancient desolate realm of gods, an old man with a genial aura sat with his legs crossed within the turbulence of spatial storms capable of disintegrating any existence below the third heaven. To survive the destructive energies of the void, one had to, at least, perfect a law. The old man seemed to be in harmony with the conceptual space and time around him. The old grey robes he wore were anything but simple as space runes. No, his law comprehension had manifested on them. This old man belonged to an era before the life goddess. He was the space-time god and he controlled space and time as he wished. Unfortunately, he was more proficient in the laws of space than time. He also was the possessor of the space-time god eye. All of a sudden, the old man opened his eyes, revealing deep pools that looked like two black holes. His eyes emanated the aura of antiquity, as if he had seen and lived through countless eras that spanned hundreds of billions of years. Did that ripple just travel across all points of? A grim expression settled on the space-time god's face. This is going to be a big deal as it concerns the future of the fan universe. The space-time god exhaled slowly and his breath inadvertently shattered the space before him as seen by the small mirror-like crack on its fabric. The ripple of an unknown source had roused different reactions from various prominent figures of the fan universe, and they were only left with unanswered questions. In the Great Canopy Country, at the Tower of the Six Warlock Divine Sage, there was someone who got a hold of little clues through divination, but at what cost? Back to the Broken Moon sect. Zhao Wei was reveling in the new changes of the evolved. He touched a black stone from the ground and intently stared at it. Abruptly, lines of text gradually materialized in his vision like a small HUD, heads-up display. Black stone. A random stone picked from the ground. Then with a thought, he dispersed the text. Zhao Wei then took a pill bottle from his pocket before placing a shiny blue pill with a crystalline surface on his palm. Its pill aroma was expertly contained within. Even Zhao Wei could barely register its scent, and only due to his strong olfactory senses, which were akin to that of a voracious beast, could he perceive the almost imperceptible aroma. He then forced his newly gained ability to activate. Marrow Cleansing Pill. This is a perfect grade pill created by the junior alchemist, Zhao Wei. The pill is of the highest quality as it has retained 99.9% of its medicinal power. Created from the following ingredients: spirit marrow herb, 5 seasons flower, 100-year-old purple ginseng, violet grass, and 3 drops of pure spiritual water. Effects: used to cleanse the marrows and improve the quality of the blood. It's also an important pill for physical body refiners. TCH, only 99.9%? Why does it feel like a mockery? Zhao Wei groaned in displeasure at the evaluation of his pill, arduously created from his blood and sweat. Anyway, even though the evolution didn't straight up grant me battle-oriented abilities, its information perception is still very valuable, if not more. Zhao Wei analyzed the advantages of having this appraisal ability. He was satisfied with it as everything directly linked to reality stemmed from one thing: knowledge. Let's call the new ability, Truth Discernment. With one sweep of my gaze, all the truth and falsehood of the world shall be laid bare in the open. Zhao Wei named the new ability instead of giving it something generic like Eyes of Appraisal. Just then an interesting thought came to his mind and a mischievous smile formed on his face. Should I analyze my physique? Chapter 123, Akasha Terminal, Unlicensed Medical Doctor, Delusional Zhao Wei. Zhao Wei had reached an important step, he wanted to know his physique's evaluation. How did reality or the universe's knowledge terminal perceive the? Stating it like that made him think of Sumera City's Akasha terminal invented by the greater leader Rukhadevata, but fortunately, his somehow seemed to be connected to the universe's database, drawing detailed knowledge from things he had surface knowledge about, or so he thought. In essence, Zhao Wei was basically still in the beta period testing of the evolved ocular power, so he had to take his time to see its limitations and strong points. So far has shown to activate whenever I make physical contact with an object. I wonder if it can extend to anything within my line of vision. Another speculative thought cropped up in his mind before he decided to first concentrate on what he was going to do. That will have to wait first, since I am curious about something else at the moment. An anticipatory glint gleamed in Zhao Wei's deep pools as he concentrated his conscious thoughts on his body whilst activating. Name, Zhao Wei. Secret identity, transmigrator, possessor of the God Eye variant. Current identity, inner disciple of Broken Moon sect, partial disciple of both Vice Head Zhang and Vice Head Guan, favored disciple of Elder Hai Yun. Profession, junior alchemist, trash painter, mortal level chef, unlicensed medical doctor. Cultivation base, first sky of the ascended realm. Body cultivation technique, primordial stellar energy body refining art. Other cultivation techniques, tyrant fist, flowing stream, instantaneous lightning movement, illusory steps, overworld thunder cry. Plus. Physique, myriad constellation physique, incomplete. Bloodline, none. Lifespan, only 10 years of living remain as a result of the curse known as eating more than you can chew, brought into effect by forcefully using the Hax Stellar Nova, the one. What the F***? Eating more than I can chew? Like seriously? I was saving my pitiful life from a three-eyed medium-ranked mysterious villainous old goat. He could feel the sting deep in his soul. And what's with trash painter and unlicensed medical doctor? As much as I want to refute this, it isn't exactly wrong per se. Various cursive thoughts stampeded around in his mind nonetheless. Zhao Wei then opened his mouth wide like a fool, his eyes almost poking out of their sockets like Pinocchio's nose. He wondered if there was something wrong with. The information was so detailed and vital that it even exposed his secret status as the neighborhood's cliched transmigrator. And that was something that every reincarnator, regressor, or transmigrator always guards with their life. Well, it's not like Zhao Wei cared that much. Though not as terrifying as exposing his inner emotions, alignment, sexuality, and thoughts, Zhao Wei felt that had reservations about some of his personal information. At least, it didn't act like some NPC favorability system. Zhao Wei shrugged as he continued to analyze his status information. But still, it hasn't provided what I was expecting. The focus should be on my physique instead of my whole being. Zhao Wei once again focused on that single detail, the. Soon, lines of text began to form in his field of view. This is a special physique fatefully formed as a result of practicing the primordial stellar body refining art. Forged from the absorption of the primal essences of the moon, sun, and the stars. The pioneer of the physique, Zhao Wei, can channel these celestial energies throughout his body and make them exist in a harmonious state. Even though it's incomplete, it grants the pioneer the following boons: incalculable talent, no bottlenecks, unable to be categorized under Fan Universe's talent distinctions, limited fate veiling, slightly resistant to fate deductions, potent regenerative healing, unchained physical might, extreme heat, and cold resistance, forged from the flames of the sun and the cold of the moon, stellar flames. As incomplete as it is, it has the leeway to evolve and continuously grow stronger as long as the pioneer continues to deduce and perfect the primordial stellar body refining art. Hee. Zhao Wei rubbed his chin while chuckling unceasingly. He looked crazy at this moment. But not crazy enough. There's still room for improvement. Stellar flames was something that he improvised after immersing himself in the Dao of alchemy over the past few days. It directly went against what was already established in the Society of Alchemists. Only true spirit realm experts could use their own flames to perform alchemical arts, but Zhao Wei thought otherwise. He was secretly a lawbreaker. An unconventional one to boot. Instead of using coals or unreliable combustible materials, why couldn't he just create his own flames to perform his own way of alchemy? Yun Yao had her own school of thought when it came to the Dao of alchemy, even old man Guan. Zhao Wei upped his game and decided to circumvent the almost insurmountable wall between him and true spirit realm experts. I wonder why he's still the vice head. I reckon even among true human rank experts there exists qualitative differences. The current head of the Grasswood division should be more experienced and powerful in terms of alchemy and general combat. Zhao Wei arrived at a conclusion regarding old man Guan's current situation. Unfurling his palm, white and yellow flames instantly materialized, silently and eerily dancing in all directions under his secret puppetry. The stellar flames looked unusually tame under Zhao Wei's hands. The extreme heat easily increased the temperature inside the room, but no sweat could be seen on his skin. He could feel the flames' heat, volatility, ferocity, and impulsive urge to incinerate everything. And if it were not for Zhao Wei's existence, the stellar flames would have made winter turn into a full-blown summer. Extinguishing the flames from his hands, Zhao Wei exhaled a hot, misty breath. I have been sequestered in this room for almost an eternity. He yawned in exaggeration as his cross-legged form began to float in midair. Then, he stretched his legs to stand, his feet smoothly landing on the ground. How lazy was he to not just stand up like any normal person would? Well, the problem was that he was not normal, and casually floating during meditation was addictive as hell. Zhao Wei understood the need to practice acting cool, both for his audience and those who wanted their faces slapped. I wonder how Yun Yao is doing. The mature beauty who is addicted to the Dao of alchemy should be practicing what she's good at. Probably. Zhao Wei nonchalantly stretched his body, his joints, bones, and muscles making sounds of pleasure. And then, he stepped outside into the snow-laden lands. Cold winds brushed against his handsome face and obsidian black hair, causing a few strands to loosely obscure his vision. The Night King has arrived. I am going to one-shot him and destroy the suspense of the final season. A delusional smile formed on Zhao Wei's face as he walked the lands of snow, determined to save the Seven Kingdoms. Anya and Snow, they better be prepared. With each step that Zhao Wei took, the cold snow on the ground began to subtly melt due to his body's special heat. Chapter 124, Under the Oak Tree. Word count 1.8k. It was late evening and the little snowflakes had gradually ceased to blanket the lands with their white beauty. The sun was nowhere to be seen in the inky expanse as the silvery outlines of twin full moons began to materialize. It was a beautiful sight to behold, the existence of the two ethereal moons further highlighting the fantastical aspect of the snow-covered landscape. In the haven of dignified alchemists, inside the architectural wonder of a stylish pagoda, an oak tree stood in a lone courtyard. The oak tree was ancient and massive, its long and twirling branches reaching toward the expansive winter sky. Uneven layers of snow clung to the branches, and whenever the chilly winter wind blew past the tree, some frost and snow would fall off, glistening under the silvery moonlight. Under the oak tree, there was a small refuge offered by the protective branches. It was an area untouched by the curse of winter. The silhouettes of two figures could be seen in the small refuge, one feminine and one masculine. A miniature bamboo accent table separated the two individuals, proudly holding onto two ornamental steaming teacups and a silver kettle that continuously spewed wisps of fragrant steam from its spout. Zhao Wei sat cross-legged, his posture exuding unspoken serenity, composure, and the confidence of an overlord. A lazy smile hung on his flawless face while his deep silver eyes sparkled naturally under the low-intensity creeping moonlight. He was looking at the sensual woman across him. Yun Yao was sitting elegantly on her knees like a sophisticated prim lady of a traditional family. She took the small cup off the table and with elegant poise, she took a sip of the freshly brewed tea with spiritual honey. She briefly closed her eyes, savoring the honeyed tea with a small pink tongue, enjoying the subtle bitterness and invigorating sweetness. Yun Yao could feel his gaze roaming all over her face and tempting body hidden beneath a revealing purple dress. She smiled in her mind. The feeling of being ogled and admired made her heart quicken its thumps. With Zhao Wei's eyes fixed on her curves, she felt an exhilarating dopamine rush, as though she were the prey of a seasoned hunter, a lethal predator who was patient and well-restrained. She knew she didn't have to impress any man with the way she dressed, but she couldn't resist wanting to look good for him. He was different. Not like any other men she had ever interacted with. Even in her mid-30s, Yun Yao still hadn't lost her heyday spark when it came to making men kneel and worship her. You've been staring for quite a while now. Does your big sister look delicious and eatable tonight? Yun Yao finally said in a seductive voice as she softly set down the cup. She was confident in herself, and as a smirk formed on her provocative red lips, she could already visualize him praising her and commenting on how irresistible she looked. Lord knows how she wanted to tease him so badly that he would forget his name. Zhao Wei, tonight it's my win. Her hazel green eyes twinkled imperceptibly. Zhao Wei didn't hold her gaze and instead picked up the teacup before drinking half of the contents in it. He was avoiding her gaze not due to timidness but something else entirely. How could he look at her straight after discreetly using truth discernment on her? He wished he had never done so since the information he had gained about Yun Yao factored in also her bust, waist, and hip measurements. I, Zhao Wei, have never cared about these things, the young man lamented inside his heart. Then why? Why was the universe trying to introduce him to the Dao of perversion? That was simply borderline heretical. Immoral. Even Lord Fifth acknowledged this type of immorality when he was the most immoral avian across the infinite realities. As cultured as he was in the Dao of anime, there was a realm of perversion that he had never wanted to reach as it was truly reserved for the true degenerates beyond the cosmos. Sighing, Zhao Wei pushed aside his thoughts and focused on Yun Yao. Delicious? Eatable? What kind of pill did you concoct and eat today? Zhao Wei furrowed his brows. He had decided to withhold his honest opinion about how ravishing she looked tonight. He didn't want to tell her what she wanted to hear. You are no fun. Is it that hard to offer a simple unbiased compliment to a gentle lady? Yun Yao puckered her lips in slight annoyance. She knew Zhao Wei was just being himself, that is, pretending to be unpredictable. There goes my plan to tease him. I feel like you have grown stronger, little guy, Yun Yao said nonchalantly as she proceeded to hold the silver kettle's handle before refilling Zhao Wei's cup. Zhao Wei resisted gritting his teeth in frustration. It seems you haven't given up on addressing me like that, Yun Yao. How many times have I reminded you that I am not as little as you claim me to be? Yun Yao grinned mischievously, having discovered a new hobby during her prolonged stay with the young man. Just like how she enjoyed refining pills, she also liked getting a rise out of him. After all, Zhao Wei rarely reacted to her naughtiness. I am older than you, sweetie, and when I say you're a little guy, it's because you are. No doubt about it, she said confidently, giving him a playful wink to let him know she was joking around. Zhao Wei drank the tea in his cup in one swift motion as he considered something before he slowly spoke in a husky voice. Yun Yao, there is a boundary that I don't want to cross if possible, but you have been testing my patience ever since we met. I feel like my emotions are on edge whenever you speak without filter. You are wild, and so am I. Even a monk has a limit when provoked. Yun Yao felt small, hot, and bothered, under his raw intense gaze that carried promises of an adventurous night, of passion and heavenly sensations. Of loosely tamed lust. As she gazed into his eyes, she immediately sensed an uncontainable thirst for her. His eyes, which were kissed by the moon, were trying to conceal the fiery passion that was burning within him. But she knew better, she could feel his desire radiating off him like heat waves. Zhao Wei had been suppressing himself for long and right now, he wasn't in the clearest state of mind. The thirst was real, further emboldened by the brilliance of the moon and the romantic silence of the night. He was averse to such topics, but it seems the time to confront his inner wants and feelings had arrived. Yun Yao directed her gaze to the fallen brown leaf on the ground as her cheeks flushed red. She realized she couldn't hold his gaze when he was looking at her the way she always fantasized about him doing so. She could feel the heat flowing through her body and the embers of a forgotten feeling surfacing in her lower torso. What will you do about it? Yun Yao ignored all risks and decided to goad him, to provoke him. A dangerous predatory glint flashed in Zhao Wei's eyes before he gently pushed away the small table that stood between him and his prey. Yun Yao instinctively moved back, and before long, she realized that there was nowhere to run as her smooth back hit the rough surface of the oak tree's bark. Small mists of hot air continuously escaped her small mouth as her breath quickened in anticipation of what was to follow. She was prey, cornered and helpless against an alpha predator that was taking his sweet time to openly stalk her. She secretly enjoyed it. Zhao Wei hovered over her, his masculine frame casting a shadow on her voluptuous body. Yun Yao could smell his intoxicating manly scent. It overwhelmed her senses and made her feel lightheaded. When Zhao Wei leaned and touched the soft skin of her perfect face, Yun Yao's body tensed and quivered under his electrical fingers. Zhao Wei breathed in her natural scent. She smelled of jasmine and pure, unadulterated seduction. He enjoyed her submissiveness. A well-hidden smirk tugged the corners of his lips as he combed away the waves of her hair from blocking his access to her magnetic ear. Yun Yao inadvertently moaned when she felt his warm breath hit her ear. Her misty eyes, failing to hide her embarrassment and lust. Zhao Wei nearly chuckled knowing that he had such a severe effect on her hormones. When his white teeth playfully grazed the outline of her sweet ear, Yun Yao arched her back in unrestrained pleasure as another needy, more prolonged, moan escaped her succulent tasty lips. A domain down there was suffering from a sudden influx of lewd juices. She was like a tsunami. A flood dragon. Zhao Wei smelled her excitement as he thought of something ridiculous. You were asking me what I wanted. Zhao Wei sent a puff of air down her hair and she looked at him with beady eyes. She wanted more. She wasn't confident of resisting the sweet torture. She needed his lips on her. With all those desires swirling in her mind and clouding her judgment, Yun Yao hastily breathed out a reply. Yes. Yes. Zhao Wei flashed a wicked grin like a villain who was about to finalize his evil plan. Too soon for you to find out. He said in a low voice, and as if clarity was returning to his mind, Zhao Wei leaned back to a confused Yun Yao whose beautiful face was a maelstrom of fiery desires and carnal impulses. She was in heat. Zhao Wei patted her head lovingly as if she was a cute little girl. Little girl, I am older than you. He caressed her soft cheeks before walking away. When Zhao Wei's figure eventually disappeared into the night, Yun Yao had yet to fully process what had just happened. Did she just get left hanging when she was all pheromonic and ready for something passionate? What a nefarious plot it was. Zhao Wei. I am going to kill you. A royally pissed voice cut through the night like a knife through hot butter as malice and dread radiated off the shaking figure of Yun Yao. She was going to have her revenge. Under the oak tree, she solemnly pledged. Chapter 125, I am really not a shameless perverted alchemist. WC 1923. As the first light of day crept over the horizon, the broken moon sect stirred awake. The sun's warm golden rays pierced through the thick layers of frost and snow, transforming the icy landscape into a sparkling wonderland of diamonds. Perched atop the roof of a modest house, a solitary figure sat cross-legged like a wise sage in deep contemplation. His eyes were closed, but his long dark eyelashes fluttered softly in the gentle breeze. The stillness of his body was a stark contrast to the vibrant energy of the surrounding world. Zhao Wei suddenly opened his eyes, revealing deep silvery pupils with golden tints reminiscent of the sun. Zhao Wei gazed at the breathtaking scene of the sun ascending above the distant horizons as if it were escaping the oppressive grasp of the snow-laden countless mountains. A cool breeze howled past his face, gently ruffling his enviable hair. What a wonderful morning, Zhao Wei said softly as he greedily breathed in the refreshing scent of a new dawn. With wisps of the fresh morning air filling his lungs, Zhao Wei had the momentary feeling that he could tackle anything. It was a reminder for himself. It was a possibility. It was a future that he yearned for just like most cultivators. The evergreen bamboo trees below swayed happily to the celestial music of the wind. They danced as if to commemorate Zhao Wei's feelings. Even though I have advanced to the peak first sky of the ascended realm, I don't feel any noticeable increase in strength except for the increase in my energy pool, Zhao Wei lightly mused as he observed the massive amounts of true force bubbling inside his dantian. With two sources of true force energy, Zhao Wei had an indisputable advantage when it came to wars of attrition. Clenching his fists, he concentrated on the raw physical power coursing through his muscles just waiting to be unleashed and wreak havoc on his enemies. I sincerely miss fighting and engaging in bloody battles. I feel kind of rusty, but a peaceful life now and then isn't that bad. His warrior's spirit yearned for countless battles while his rationality chased after tranquility and peace. He knew the concept of peace and tranquility in a cultivation universe was a hard bargain. Without the necessary strength to back it up, then all would be for naught. I don't have the check-in system or 10,000 times rebate system to have my own slice of life yet. Zhao Wei grinned in amusement. I have to relentlessly push on forward without stopping. He stood up and briefly stared at the far-off mountains and the bright skies before gracefully jumping down the building. Slowly exhaling, he went inside to take a bath and have a change of clothes. After having the cold water rejuvenate his nerves and prime his body for the day, Zhao Wei wore his inner disciple outfit. It was a black robe made out of fine rare material, soft to the touch. An elaborate drawing of a crescent moon was expertly sewn on the back symbolizing the broken moon sect. What a special outfit! It can be able to manipulate its size to fit my physique. It also has some kind of internal thermoregulatory function that's convenient for places with hot and cold temperatures. Zhao Wei slowly analyzed his black robe, marveling at the skill of the tailor and the materials used to create such a special outfit. It can also nullify attacks from anyone below the ascended realm. This information made Zhao Wei want to test the durability of the outfit, but he controlled himself. His past self, who was in the consolidated realm, could easily counter existences with power rivaling those of the ascended realm, so the fate of the special outfit was pretty predictable. Kid, have you forgotten your teacher already? Come outside, I haven't seen you in days, and this old man can't wait to impart his lessons. Suddenly, a lively old voice cut through Zhao Wei's round of thoughts. It was old man Guan, and the day had arrived for him to pick up the young genius. How was he? Did he live up to your expectations? Outside Zhao Wei's house, old man Guan curiously asked the mature beauty beside him. Humph, he isn't that bad. I showed him everything I knew that a beginner should be mindful of. Yun Yao replied with a complicated expression on her alluring visage, her voice filled with sourness and certain grievance. He's a quick learner. I want to say more, but I will have to leave the other bits for you to see for yourself. Yun Yao added begrudgingly as her burning gaze stayed glued on Zhao Wei's door. The door that once opened would show her the annoyingly handsome face of the man who played her for a fool last night. Old man Guan noted this since he had never seen Yun Yao showing such a face and talking as if she had some unfinished business with someone that murdered her pet. Did something happen between the two? He wondered in confusion while rubbing his beard. Don't tell me. Something clicked inside his mind as he came up with his own conclusion. Old man Guan, as someone with a century of experience, could clearly sense that there was some friction between Yun Yao and the brat, Zhao Wei. The possibility of a lover's spurt was high, but he couldn't rule out the possibility of Yun Yao being genuinely dissatisfied with something terrible that his pseudo-disciple did. He couldn't get a total read on Yun Yao's current emotional state. She was a jumbled mess. I can't wait to ask Zhao Wei what transpired between them, haha. Old man Guan's eyes twinkled in slight anticipation. Soon, the door opened, and a young man came out with an innocent expression on his face. Greetings, teacher. Zhao Wei performed a respectful bow at old man Guan. At that moment, he showed the naivety and air of a young pretty boy. Yun Yao scoffed internally at this. You look more energetic than the last time I saw you, Zhao Wei. What has Yun Yao been feeding you? Old man Guan accepted his greetings with an amicable smile as he patted Zhao Wei's shoulder. Ahem, Miss Yun is a good cook. She showed me the prowess of an experienced chef and fed me quite well. Zhao Wei heartily explained as he stole a glance at Yun Yao. Oh, really? I didn't know Yun Yao liked to cook. Well, this is a first, as she always invested in the art of alchemy with no time to squander. Old man Guan arched his brows in genuine surprise. This cheeky bastard. How can he willfully joke about my bad cooking talent with such a straight face? Truly hateful. Yun Yao clenched her small hands in silent anger. Only she knew about the hidden sarcasm in Zhao Wei's words. This further worsened her mood after having a long, sleepless night of tossing around in bed. But then she remembered that she had a plan to return her embarrassment of that night, which calmed her down. All in all, she didn't prioritize her insubstantial revenge over her newfound ambitions. Let's go then. We have a lot to cover, young man, old man Guan said with urgency. He even forgot about the tension between the two. Meet me at the square after you have sorted out your issues with Yun Yao. He then alternated a knowing look between them before walking away with an amused smile on his ruddy face. Both Yun Yao and Zhao Wei silently gazed at each other, unsure of who should start the conversation. Even Zhao Wei didn't know how to feel about their current situation. And that was the problem, he knew he wasn't supposed to feel. He couldn't forget his vision, ambitions, and aspirations. A soft, tired sigh left Yun Yao's lips, which broke the silence. You are reluctant. You remind me of my younger self somehow. She began. How? When I didn't believe in something as disillusioning as love or affection. Zhao Wei looked at the contours of the woman's perfect face, not knowing what to say. So there were times when he didn't have a suitable input of his own. Why aren't you saying anything? Yun Yao spoke in frustration, her voice tinged with a slight tremor. She looked vulnerable. We should take the time to think and calm our minds. What happened last night was just a spur of the moment, Yun Er. Zhao Wei finally spoke with hints of genuine affection. Not of love or lust. He saw Yun Yao as a fun person. He felt comfortable with her as they shared similar interests when it came to the Dao of alchemy. She felt more than an acquaintance, she was a friend. Feelings beyond that were only going to lead to unforeseen complications that he wasn't prepared for. Yun Yao felt giddy inside her heart when she heard him address her affectionately, but she wasn't happy about him avoiding what could ensue between them. But she knew she couldn't force the issue. She was understanding enough to have a rough guess about Zhao Wei's thoughts. Some as unrestrained as him couldn't be bound easily. It would take time, effort, and sacrifice. Their current relationship, as vague as it was, wasn't that bad to begin with. Yun Yao smiled. He's a challenge, but I have never shied away from challenges. Instead of being a pitiable woman, it was better to grow up a pair. Don't forget to visit me when you get the time, okay? I still have a lot of alchemical theories and incomplete recipes you could help me with, big brain. Yun Yao moved forward and delicately palmed his cheek. Her eyes widened, astounded by how smooth his skin was. It's a deal. As a scholar, I still have a lot to learn from you. Zhao Wei allowed her to touch him, and after a few moments, he curled his fingers around her wrist before gently pulling her hand away. And without speaking further, he walked away lest he did something stupid, again. When he finally left, Yun Yao looked at the part where Zhao Wei had just touched. His scent and warmth still lingered on her skin. She looked around carefully as if confirming that no one was looking at her before pressing her wrist against her nose. Huff! She breathed in his scent before her cheeks flushed red. I am really not a shameless perverted alchemist. She deceived herself. At that moment, she didn't care about her image. Zhao Wei. She softly called his name as a dangerous indiscernible look flashed in his hazel eyes. Meanwhile, as Zhao Wei reached the square where old man Guan was waiting for him, he suddenly felt an eerie chill cascade down his spine. Who is suddenly obsessing over me? Brat, what took you so long? Old man Guan called out to the approaching Zhao Wei. Just nothing special. Zhao Wei vaguely replied with an unreadable expression. Old man Guan didn't question him. Let's go. This old man will teach you more than the beautiful senior sister of yours. Old man Guan said confidently with a chuckle as he led Zhao Wei to a magnificent pavilion. Zhao Wei grumbled internally after understanding the hidden implications of the old man's words. What an observant old coot.
Thanks for listening.